All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's that Monday yet again. Time for another 10 chapters of the solo leveling light novel. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Oh, right, I almost forgot something. Give me a sec. Okay, we are now clear to keep going. So today we're going to be reading through chapters 41 to 50, leaving off of Jin. Hold on, let me go back. Leaving off with Jin wondering about how Song Min managed to know exactly where he was and wanting to speak to Jin because Song Min was, you know, learned more about him. Mihai, good to see you. Welcome all. Chapter 41. One couldn't find the addresses of hunters on the association's website. The only things appearing there were the names of hunters and their ranks. A hunter could provide the relevant information themselves, but Jin didn't even leave behind his contact number there. But not only had this guy known his phone number, he was waiting near Jin's home, so without a doubt he must have gathered enough information before showing up there. Ah, now that I think about it, he abruptly remembered something. I sensed a gaze on me earlier today, so I'm guessing that belonged to one of your people? Jin's voice became a level colder. The guy on the phone apologized with a polite tone of voice. Jin pondered for a while before speaking up. I'll be there shortly. The Hunters, the Reapers, the Night Order, the Shining Star, and then us, the White Tiger. I'm sure you've heard of these names before. Sang Min read off the names of the top 5 guilds in South Korea one by one. The number 1 guild was the Hunters. However, the Hunters didn't start its life as the number 1 from the get-go. No, it was the Reapers who used to be the top dog. However, after White Tiger separated itself from the Reapers, the number 1 spot changed hands. Was this the case of the student becoming the master? After going independent, the White Tiger leapfrogged the Reapers a long time ago, and they were aiming for the number 1 spot that originally belonged to the Reapers. Sang Min was completely sure of it now. He was sure the fact that the man sitting across him, Sung Jinu, would become an important piece of the puzzle and help the White Tiger reclaim the glory of the past once more. Sang Min presented his business card. An Sang Min, Section Chief, 2nd Division of the White Tiger Guild. Oh, snap, we just gained a new member. Mihai, welcome. Welcome to being a member. Oh my goodness. Well, now this stream has become even more legendary now. Thank you for joining the legendary peoples. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you at the upcoming members summit for August. Sorry, I got distracted there. Let's keep going. An Sang Min, Section Chief, 2nd Division of the White Tiger Guild. My name is An Sang Min, and I'm in charge of the 2nd Division of the White Tiger Guild, one of the top 5 in the country. Our role is to scout talented hunters and manage them. If Jin was any other hunter, he'd have lowered his head 90 degrees before a business card was even brought out, and only then get to the main topic. Unless one was an S rank or an A, pretty much all hunters dreamed of entering the White Tiger. Honestly, Sang Min was hoping for that kind of reaction as well. Unfortunately, Jin was different. Not showing much reaction at all, he calmly asked what he wanted to ask first. Also, real quick, I gotta do this officially, because I forgot to press the button when it happened. Mihai, thank you for joining the legendary peoples. Yes, give it up for him. Yes, every single time someone does this, this needs the appropriate fanfare. My apologies. All right, back to it. I'm sorry. Not showing much reaction at all, he calmly asked what he wanted to ask first. Why does an officer of the White Tiger Guild perform background checks on someone like me? Sanmin inwardly flinched. He's not pressured even after hearing the name of the White Tiger? They hadn't spoken for long, but for some reason Sanmin sensed it'd be rather challenging to scout Jin. On the other hand, that only made him even more desperate to bring Jin into his guild now. Well, it wouldn't be a bad thing for a newbie to be rather confident about himself now, would it? Right. You gotta have at least, family jewels as big as this so we can start throwing you into whatever assignment that comes our way. Sanmin firmed his resolve once more. Let me get straight to the point. We wish to scout you, Mr. Sung Jinu. We promise to offer you double the amount of terms as offered by the Yujin Construction. No strings attached. Sangmin smiled deeply. Yujin Construction was still in the middle of testing Jin out. They're being stupid. The speed at which he could clear a rank C dungeon, the publicity value of a reawakened hunter, and the calmness he was displaying in the current situation, etc. No matter which side it was, there was no need to test this man out at all. There's no way that they have offered anything good, since they would have figured out what his true worth is. This was why Sangmin was confident of doubling whatever terms Yujin offered this man. No, he was confident of offering something even better. However, Jin's stare became even colder. How did you know? Pardon me? Being on the receiving end of a reaction utterly contrary to his expectations, Sangmin ended up stuttering slightly, which was quite unbecoming of an experienced headhunter working for a large guild. How did you find out about me? If Jin's voice actually had any physical weight, then that sentence would have crushed him to death, thought Sangmin. What is this? This incredible pressure? It was almost as if the other party was considering him as an enemy. Well, it was true that he had Jin followed and one-sidedly demanded to meet like this. From Jin's perspective, it would be perfectly reasonable to consider Sangmin as his enemy. Sangmin hurriedly explained himself. It wasn't our original intention to pry into your private affairs. We received information that someone was clearing rank C dungeons in our district at an alarming rate, so we were investigating that. And that led us to finding out about you, Sung Jinu Hunter Neem. Jin retracted his gaze. So that's what happened. Contrary to his thoughts, the other side didn't seem to have begun their investigation while knowing that something didn't add up about him. Simply, by clearing dungeons far too quickly, he ended up being noticed instead. And he doesn't seem to be carrying any hostile intentions either. Jin's expression softened slightly, and as a result, the taut tension between the two men eased a little. Whew. Sangmin patted his chest down. Their conversation still hadn't advanced forward, though. From here onwards, he had to get on Jin's good books. And nothing's better than the sharing of privileged information to get on someone's good books. Sangmin was the specialist when it came to scouting, after all. He quickly wiped the flustered expression off his face and formed a smile instead. Although it is a top secret, we know that the chairman Yu Myung-hwan is planning to establish a guild of his own. Jin doesn't say anything. Jin neither denied it or confirmed it. So Sangmin continued on. And that's how we were able to figure it out when that person's son, Mr. Yu Jin-oh, made contact with you, Sung Jin-oh Hunter Neem. And that is, They wish to bring you, a reawakened hunter, into their new guild. Indeed, Songmin thought that Jin was a reawakened. Well, I'm relieved that you think that way. Jin wouldn't need to cook up another story here, in other words. Songmin quickly carried on. I thought we'd need to talk to you before you signed up with Jin, and that's the only reason for my one-sided attempt to get in touch with you. Allow me to apologize once more if you've been greatly inconvenienced. It's fine. Unless the other party approached him with evil intentions, there was no reason for Jin to get angry, especially when Songmin was apologizing this earnestly. Besides, what's more important here is that, indeed, how should he go about dealing with this now? While Jin pondered on what he should do here, Songmin took the initiative and asked him a question. Have you finished negotiating with Yujin Construction already? He must have thought like this because Jin... Sorry, moving my mic. He must have thought like this because Jin was hesitating slightly with his replies. Jin shook his head. Songmin's expression immediately reverted from one that displayed a hint of anxiety to a blooming smile. Yes! That means he's still a free agent! This was the perfect chance to catch the talented hunter who could solo a rank C dungeon in 30 minutes. To be more specific, a rank D hunter also accompanied him, but to someone who possessed abilities exceeding a rank B, such a person would no longer provide any help but would only serve as a luggage carrier instead. If Sung Jinu enters the White Tiger and is ranked A after his assignment test, then... An even bigger smile threatened to break out of his face, so Songmin was having a hard time trying to regulate his expressions. Meanwhile, Jin was slowly scratching his chin. This guy. Why does it feel like he's counting his chickens way before they hatch? Well, truthfully speaking, a guild like White Tiger was not a bad choice. Not only was it one of the top 5, but it also possessed enough potential to aim for the number 1 spot. However, Jin wasn't planning to enter a guild anytime soon. Because the higher my level is, the better the treatment I'd get. Also, even though it might be a story in the distant future, or maybe even something completely improbable, but just like how I've been clearing the rank C dungeons, what if I can clear rank B and A dungeons solo? The profit earned from high-ranked dungeons exceeded one's imaginations. They were the sole reason why large guilds could grow powerful enough to rival many large corporations now. Expensive magic crystals, corpses of the monsters, rare materials from the dungeons themselves, and even things like runestones and other artifacts too. An astronomical amount of money changed hands every day. He could potentially hog them all for himself, so was there a reason for him to share them with a guild? As long as this level up thing doesn't stop, it's not an impossible dream. So, at this point in time, entering a guild was way too premature. The corners of Jin's lips slowly arched up. Songmin thought that was a sign of an incoming positive answer and smiled along as well. Have you made up your mind? You promised to double the amount offered, yes? Yes, that's correct. If you find any offer not to your liking, then I'm prepared to offer you more. In that case, how much is the building the White Tiger calls home? Songmin's face froze for a second there. Is he questioning the financial muscle of the White Tiger? But there was no need to get worked up here. Indeed, this was a great opportunity to advertise his guild. Sorry, I read that. The inflection was wrong. My apologies. Indeed, this was a great opportunity to advertise his guild. There was nothing to hide, and absolutely no reason why he couldn't talk either. This was for the better, he thought. The estimated price is around 50 billion won. Also, although there are different businesses using the building aside from us, it still belongs to the White Tiger Guild. Songmin proudly spoke. In the beginning, the guild was renting some space in that building, but once they stabilized and found their footing, they simply bought it outright. It took only 1 year to do so, too. It was one of the easiest ways to learn just how much large guilds made in a year. If the other side wanted, Sangmin was willing to disclose the annual profit and the overall revenue, too. But then, after hearing a single sentence uttered by Jin, he became completely speechless. Yeah, that's on the internet now. I can't take that back. But then, after hearing a single sentence uttered by Jin, he became completely speechless. Can you hand over that building to me then? I beg your pardon? Songmin's eyes opened up real wide. He doubted his own hearing, so he asked back. Can you explain what you mean by that? Jin calmly explained himself. You see, Eugene has promised to hand over a building worth around 30 billion won. If the White Tiger's building is indeed around 50 billion, well, it's not exactly the double the price, but I can overlook such things. 30 billion? Songmin couldn't close his slack jaw. Jin's career spanned 4 years. However, most of those were spent as an E rank. Speechless, I will forever use that. Oh, thank you, Mihai. Thank you very much. Jin's career spanned 4 years. However, most of those were spent as an E rank, and it hadn't been long since he got noticed by someone. In other words, he must have gone through his reawakening process not too long ago. Yet, just how incredible was his ability that someone like Yu Myung-hwan, famous for his wily business smarts, promised the huge amount of 30 billion won. Not only that, even before Jin had gone through with the reassignment test. Not only that, but even before Jin had gone through with the reassignment test too. Wait, could he be lying here? Because I won't be able to confirm if this is true or not. Songmin narrowed his eyes, feeling suspicious. As if he had read Songmin's thoughts, Jin pulled out his phone and quickly dialed a number. Ring, ring. Ring, ring. Click. It was in the evenings and the interior of the cafe was quiet. Still, Jin put the phone on speaker and raised the volume to the maximum. Hey, Jinno, I wanted to ask you about something. Jinno? Was this you, Jinno? Songmin nervously swallowed his saliva. The very first chapter? Really? Really? Okay, swallowed his saliva counter has gone up by 1 in the first, 30 minutes? No, not even 20 minutes, it's 17 minutes. Songmin nervously swallowed his saliva. Could he be thinking of telling you, Jinno, what we've been discussing just now? Too bad. Songmin's expectation was a bit off the mark. Jin spoke about something else. That building you wanted to give me. How much did you say it was? And that's the end of chapter 41. Onwards to chapter 42. Also, I still need to put the timestamps for the previous solo leveling session. I was literally in the middle of doing that. I'll take care of that after I'm done with this session, and then once this session is fully processed, then I'll go ahead and put the timestamps in there for anyone who happens to be watching. Chapter 42. Hold on. Jin covered the mouthpiece of the phone with his hand and asked Sangmin, if you still can't believe it, why don't you speak to him personally? Sangmin wiped the cold sweat forming on his forehead and shook his head. Hey, Jinno, it's fine. Thanks. I'm hanging up now. After ending the call, Jin noticed that the look on Sangmin's face had changed completely now. Indeed, Sangmin's eyes were trembling non-stop. Even before their guild is established, Eugene has promised 30 billion as the contract signing fee? And then the second son of Chairman Yu Myung-hwan continues to use honorifics too? Sangmin was now deeply mired in uncertainty and confusion. That is... I should say that such a big amount is, well beyond my ability to. If you just give me some time, I can speak to the higher ups in the guild and then. Jin abruptly cut him off. Hey, High Dragon, what's going on? In that case, our discussion ends here. Sungmin became speechless. His head drooped slightly, as his head was quickly filled with the reason for this failure. In the end, we simply didn't have enough information. Being too hasty brought about this failure. After he picked up on the scent of this huge jackpot, he got too excited and forgot to move in a more cautious and prepared manner. If he had learned of what Eugen's offer was like, get the full backing of his guild, and go about his business step by step, then. For now, I need to report this to the guildmaster. If he was a hunter that Chairman Yu Myung-won was willing to put forward 30 billion, then perhaps his value could be over 50 billion. No, 100 billion instead. It was not too late. If I get the promise of the guild's full backing, dig out all the information on Sung Jin-woo, and come out swinging even harder, then. It was at this point that Jin's voice could be heard. I want to ask you about something. Sungmin raised his head. Jin was no longer smiling. The weather had warmed up nicely with the hint of spring nowadays, yet for some reason the surrounding air felt chillier than usual. Just as Sungmin swallowed some dry saliva, that's 2, I'm counting that one, that's 2 now, Jin asked him a question with a low, heavy voice. How many people know about me? It's only me for the time being. I was too anxious to scout you, so I didn't even stop to report to my superiors yet. Actually, there was one more person, Young Ki-chol, his subordinate, but also his right-hand man. Sungmin concealed the presence of Young Ki-chol for the time being. He was worried that Jin might get real unhappy if he learned that there were 2 people instead of 1. However, Jin's voice became even colder and threatening than before. Count 2, not even 4 minutes from the last. Ain't that something? However, Jin's voice became even colder and threatening than before. For the sake of trust, let's not lie to each other, shall we? Sungmin began panicking visibly now. What is this? Did he obtain some information on us before coming here? If that were the case, then things might get worse if he continued to argue that he was the only one. He didn't want to imagine what would happen next. I gotta be honest here. The relationship between a hunter and a guild was pretty similar to that of an entertainer and the talent agency. They might not be able to sign a contract right now, but by maintaining a good relationship, anything could happen in the future. At the bare minimum, he should not cause friction with another hunter. That was one of the ironclad rules of the 2nd Division. Sungmin quickly opened his mouth. Actually, one of my subordinates also knows about this matter. I'm telling you the honest truth. Jin nodded his head. Indeed. It was as he suspected. All these things, there were too many for one person to handle, investigating him, observing him, and calling him too. Most importantly, what made Jin sure of this fact was the timing of the phone call. As soon as he was near his place, Sungmin called him with such excellent timing. Meaning, someone was waiting near my home and called him as soon as I showed up. This man wanted to meet Jin as soon as possible, but it'd be bad if Yu Jin-oh found out in the process after all. Still, it's not the whole White Tiger Guild. He could tell from that earlier reaction back when he was talking about 50 billion won. Sungmin was so openly flustered when an amount of money he couldn't handle was brought up. If he was being ordered around by the upper management, then he'd at least try giving them a call after hearing that amount. Didn't matter whether that amount was even feasible or not. That was why Jin suspected that a small team consisting of 2, maybe 3 people were involved here. And lo and behold, the person in charge confessed to it being only 2. What a relief. Jin definitely didn't want to complicate the matter any further than necessary. 2 people were within his ability to control. The way that's written. In his ability to control. If he left them alone like this, no doubt they would continue to harass him down the line. That was why there was a definite need to warn the other party, back off him for good. Jin opened his mouth. Actually, I also refuse Jin's offers. Jin's explosive, unexpected revelation. Sangmin was even more shocked than before. Pardon me? It was at this moment Jin suddenly vanished from the spot. What? Sangmin hurriedly stood up from his chair. He quickly scanned the interior of the cafe but couldn't spot Jin anywhere. What was that? Could he have moved faster than the eye can see? Sangmin was too flustered and realized that someone had grabbed his shoulder from the side quite belatedly. All the hair on his back stood up at once. Don't turn around. A cold voice came from his side. Jin, who had been sitting across from him until then, had vanished without making a sound and was now standing right next to him, still not visible to the naked eye. Stealth? Cold sweat drops formed on Sangmin's forehead. Could he be angry at me? Hunters were, in general, monsters. He knew this well because he got to observe them from a close vantage point every single day. That was why he was always super respectful towards them. Did me spying on him and following him around cause an issue here? Should I have requested protection from the guild before coming here? No. Hang on. No one knows what his ranking is, so how can I request protection then? His thoughts became messy, and his heart pounded relentlessly. Even the sound of him swallowing his saliva, that's 3 now, echoed around too loudly in his ears. Jin spoke almost in a hushed whisper. Sit down slowly. I don't want to scare you. Sangmin slowly nodded his head. But you're plenty scary all enough already. He then slowly sat back down on his chair. Jin revealed himself and settled down right next to him. Right. Jin's words of not wanting to scare Sangmin sounded about right. His eyes, when he said he wanted to ask something, were cold enough to chill the surrounding air. If Sangmin had to stare into those eyes while listening to Jin's words, then he might have experienced what his heart falling to the pit of his stomach felt like. You're being considerate towards me, is that it? Of course, he couldn't get the thoughts of Jin being this very scary guy out of his head. In the meantime, Jin opened his mouth. The reason why I refused Jin's offers is simple. I'm not planning to join any guilds at the moment. 2 men conversed while staring forward, never locking their eyes once. So that's how it is. Also, Jin took a second before continuing on. I don't want to see the number of people who know about me increase. What he wanted here was rather simple. He didn't want to join a guild, and he didn't want anyone talking about him. Sangmin quickly understood these points. However, there was still one thing he was curious about. Then, why are you still being accompanied by Mr. Jin Oh? He's helping me out on some personal matters. He's the only one who knows about my reawakening. Also, I believe he's a friend that I can trust. That's why I asked him for a favor. And so, Jin's voice became heavier still. So, if I start hearing things about me, can I assume that it came from you, Chi Fan Sangmin, or your subordinate? It'd been a while since Jin stopped grabbing his shoulder, yet Sangmin felt like he was being crushed by the younger man's words.
He's not putting on airs either.
Why did he feel this way? Sangmin was so sure of the fact that Jin was fully capable of harming him.
My gut instinct when evaluating people is almost always right.
Jin survived several devastating, horrifying accidents. Wasn't there a saying about burying the matters of the dungeon inside a dungeon? No one knew just what kinds of things Jin did inside those dungeons.
On top of that, this man possesses the stealth skill too.
Dealing with the stealth skill was incredibly tough. If the skill holder decided to commit a crime, he'd be able to off anyone without so much as leaving behind a single clue. Things like CCTV, security guards, and alarm systems would all become utterly useless against such a person. A thick strand of cold sweat rolled down the side of Sangmin's forehead.
Who knew he could use stealth?
Excellent abilities, and even a rare skill, too. It was not for nothing that Yujin came up with an offer of 30 billion.
They aren't ones to start losing a business deal indeed.
Sangmin's heart continued to beat in excitement even though he was trembling in fear. His lips parted with great difficulty.
I'll never speak about this matter ever again. I'll make sure that Ki Chol, no, my subordinate, will keep his mouth shut as well.
Keeping everything hush-hush was something Sangmin also wanted too. Heck, he probably would have requested it himself first. An excellent hunter not affiliated with anyone. There was no reason to increase the competition by spreading the rumor around. Nor did Sangmin want to share the glory and recognition by telling other people either.
Honestly, though, the biggest reason being I'm too scared of him and don't want him as my enemy.
I'll trust you, Chi Fan. With those words, the presence beside Sangmin disappeared completely. He quickly took a look around. It was as if Sangmin fell out of a different dimension, since the atmosphere inside the cafe was rather serene.
Huh?
Sangmin remained speechless. He could only pat his pounding chest down. It was here that Ki Cho ran into the cafe. He'd been staring at the two men through the window from the outside, and as soon as Jin completely disappeared from the view, hurriedly entered the cafe to check up on his superior officer. Chief! Sangmin's complexion was poor. Ki Cho asked, his voice full of worry. What happened? Did it not work out with Sung Jin-woo? Sangmin's trembling hands managed to pull out a cigarette. While sliding it between his lips, he made his reply.
Hey, Kichola. I think we just ran into a far bigger jackpot than our initial estimates.
He definitely had to scout that man. That was the only line of thought in his head. Thankfully, there was still a chance. It was then Ki Cho lightly grasped Sangmin's wrist. Pardon me, Chief. Sangmin raised his head just before he could light the cigarette up.
Yeah?
Ki Cho took a look around and then cautiously whispered.
This is a no smoking zone.
Sangmin slowly crushed the cigarette.
You idiot!
As soon as he got home, Jin summoned his status window. Tring! Name, Sung Jin-woo. Level, 39. Class, none. Title, Slaughterer of Wolves. HP, 7220. MP, 683. Tiredness, 0. Stats, Strength, 97. Stamina, 59. Agility, 97. Intelligence, 51. Perception, 81. Available points to distribute, 0. Reduction in physical damage, 20%. Skills, passive skills, and active skills. Equipped items. Well, no wonder people are beginning to notice me. And that is the end of chapter 42. Onwards to chapter 43. From 27 to 39, his level had jumped up by 12. This would be the first time that his level saw such an explosive rise since he entered the Hapjeong Instant Dungeon back when he was still a level 1. He came out of there as level 17. Back then, his level was low, so the leveling speed was high. But now, that wasn't strictly true. This just went to show how many dungeons he cleared in a short space of time. It's been 4 days since I started clearing dungeons with Jinno, and we conquered 9 of them in only 4 days. Not only that, they were 9 C-rank dungeons too. Rank C dungeons were the highest difficulty a freelancer team could clear on their own. What a crazy clearing speed this was. This was the worst possible situation, a catastrophe for other hunters found in this area that needed rank C dungeons to make a living. Jinno, the only witness to the proceedings, was getting more and more astonished by how faster Jin was clearing each dungeon. Well, the higher his level was, the easier it got to clear a dungeon after all. 9 dungeons cleared and 12 level ups. Clearing 1 dungeon was almost as good as leveling up more than once. And he still had 10 more raids to go. By the time he finished all 19 raids, as he had agreed with Jinno, his level should shoot past 45. He won against a rank B hunter back when his level was in the mid-20s. He couldn't even begin to fathom just how strong he was now. My heart, it's beating really fast. Jin placed his hand on his chest near his heart. He sensed it pounding real fast in excitement. The sensation of getting stronger every day was one heck of an enjoyable ride. He would have never imagined such a thing happening to him in the past. Things like entering the gates and clearing the dungeons would be this much fun. Well, I can sense myself getting stronger all the time after all. As his level went up, as his stat values rose up, he could directly feel how much he had changed through hunting monsters. Hunting monsters, is it? He felt like a real hunter now. The word hunting no longer sounded like a foreign concept to him. Wasn't there a certain saying that went something like, finding the next place to hunt is just as important to a hunter as the moment he hunts? His next goal was already set. The demonic castle dungeon. He was a level 21 back then, wasn't he? He had grown by nearly 20 levels since the day he first set foot in that mysterious tower-like dungeon. He thought that perhaps now he was ready to tackle that place once more. However, just from recalling that gatekeeper monster Cerberus, he grew very cautious about taking another step in that place. What if some crazy monsters that I can't handle jump out in droves as soon as I enter? Goosebumps broke out all over his skin. If he could get away from there using the stealth skill, that would be great, but still, he had to consider the possibility of failing to do so. Even if he got lucky 10 times, just a single mistake could cost him his life. That was the life of a hunter. So, he needed to be sure. He needed to be sure of being strong enough to handle a group of monsters as strong as Cerberus. Cerberus's name was in red letters, right? He now knew that the difficulty of killing a monster was reflected in the color of its name. With the exception of the demonic castle, he had yet to run into a monster with a red name. The instant dungeons he'd been on with the random box keys were all populated with low-ranked monsters most of the time. It was the same story with the Mirai department store, too. But what was going on here? What is this? When he thought that he hadn't encountered a single monster with a red name besides the one in the demonic castle, he kind of felt like he overlooked something just now. It was as if he had forgotten something crucial. Does this mean I have run into other red name monsters besides the Cerberus? But how could that be? He fought the Cerberus when he was level 20 and nearly died, so if he fought another one before that, then he should have been pushed to the brink of death too. Ah! A loud gasp leaked out from his mouth. Indeed, there was one event where he did run into red-named monsters and almost died. The penalty quest. The centipedes he saw back in that nameless desert all had red names. Poison-fanged giant desert centipede. It'd been a while ago, and he ran into them rather unexpectedly, so his mind was not really thinking of them as monsters at this point. That was why it took some time for him to remember. If I can kill those centipedes with ease, then he'd be sure of conquering the demon's castle as well. Since there was more than one centipede there, he should be able to find out whether it was okay for him to fight against many at the same time, too. The obvious issue was how to go back to that place. Is there no other way besides not doing the daily quest? The amount of stat points he got as rewards was the same regardless of it being a penalty quest or a daily quest, which meant he wouldn't lose out too much at the end of the day. Let's go to the penalty zone tomorrow. To think he'd deliberately not do the daily quest just so he could enter the penalty zone. It was a rather funny thing when he thought about how close to death he was the first time he ran into those centipedes. I wonder, will they give me experience points and loot when I kill them? A smile automatically spread on his lips. It was then Jin's senses picked up on the presence of a person climbing out from the elevator stopping at the end of the hallway, followed by the light footsteps of a female. He was well familiar with them. It's Jinna. Currently, it was 11 p.m., about the time his little sister came home. Jin got up from his seat and headed to the door before Jinna could rummage through her pockets to find her keys. Click!
Oh,
Jinna playfully exclaimed out in admiration. She used to get so surprised every time he opened the door without a warning, but now she didn't even pretend to get shocked anymore. Well, a human was supposed to be a very adaptable creature, and here was the irrefutable proof.
I'm home.
Welcome back. Jinna greeted him with a bright smile and trotted to her room. Jin closed the door and locked it before turning around to hear.
Oppa?
Jinna peeked her head out from the doorway to her room.
Do you have free time this week?
What's up?
My homeroom teacher's doing one of those parent-teacher meeting things. If you can't make it, well, it's fine too.
Jinna looked kind of anxious, as if her homeroom teacher had axed her nicely or some such. The parent-teacher meeting, huh? Ravi, it's good to see you. Jinna was already a high school senior, meaning that school life should be getting pretty hectic right now. Jin had half a mind to come up with an excuse and say he didn't have time to go, but what an unfortunate timing this was. There was this one day where he had nothing scheduled. Darn you, Jinno. Utterly useless. Jin deliberated for a while before answering her. Thursday.
Really? Thanks, Oppa.
Jinna's expression brightened up in an instant. She looked as if she'd run to him for a bear hug, so Jin hurriedly waved his hands around. Jinna glared cutely at him and closed the door behind him. Soon, a soft groan escaped from Jin's mouth. From going on raids without a break to visiting the penalty zone, and now a parent-teacher meeting the day after tomorrow, too. It seemed that the rest of his week would remain quite busy. Part 8, Class Change Quest. We're still in Chapter 43. Jin left home early in the morning. His schedule for the day was packed, to say the least. Jinno had booked 4 gates for the day, thinking that they should do tomorrow's quota today instead. Well, if we consider the speed of clearing a dungeon, it'd not be too hard to clear 4 or 5 dungeons in a single day. Of course, it was pretty rare to see that many rank C gates opening up at the same time in the same district. So, they were rather fortunate today. With light, airy steps, he arrived at the entrance of the apartment building. However, he couldn't spot Jino's van waiting for him in the usual spot, the front of the entrance. Also, Jin sensed a suspicious presence as well. Tch. He might have dismissed it offhand were it not for the events of the night before, so he wasn't going to overlook this. And I clearly warned him, too. Jin immediately discovered a man in a business suit hiding around the corner of the building. The man was busy looking into his watch and didn't seem to have sensed Jin's approach. Jin addressed the man right in front of his nose. "Excuse me." The man flinched grandly and jumped up really high. "Sung Jinu under him." He looked like he'd seen a ghost or something. Well, I hid my presence for that purpose anyway. Jin tutted inwardly and spoke up. "You're from the White Tiger Guild, yes?"
But pardon me? Yes, I am. My name is Young Ki Chol from the 2nd Division of the White Tiger Guild."
The chief, calling himself Sang Min or some such, said last night that he was working with a subordinate, and this guy must have been him.
"It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Hunter Neem."
Ki Chol studied Jin's mood while cautiously extending his right hand. It seemed that he wanted a handshake, but obviously Jin wasn't interested. When Jin simply glared at the man without saying anything, Ki Chol withdrew his hand with a slightly reddened face. "Didn't I clearly say last night that I'm not planning to join any guild for the time being?" Ki Chol hurriedly waved his hand around.
Oh, no, I'm not here because of that."
He then presented a tumbler held in his other hand. "What's this?" Jin asked while studying the colorful liquid contained within the semi-transparent tumbler. Ki Chol pushed his chest forward and proudly spoke.
"It's vegetable juice. I've prepared it personally so you don't have to worry about its quality."
Jin's not saying anything here. Ki Chol's hand continued to push the tumbler forward. Jin had no choice but to accept the tumbler and asked again. "So, have you been waiting since the early dawn just to give me this juice?"
"Yes. Well, even if you're a hunter, you should still look after your health, you know."
Jin's puzzlement over why would the White Tiger Guild be worried about his health lasted only for a couple of seconds. Because Ki Chol bowed his head deeply and with a bright smile quickly walked away.
"See you again another time, Hunter Neem."
Jin slowly shook the tumbler at Ki Chol as the latter waved his hand. What a funny guy. After Ki Chol had disappeared from the view, Jin looked at the tumbler. He once heard stories about a certain insurance king who gave out bottles of yogurt to his customers and bought their goodwill that way. But, well, that man, Ki Chol, should be the very first guild employee ever to personally make veggie juice and deliver it. Well, I did accept it, so I can't even throw it away now, can I? That man wouldn't have been stupid enough to try it, but if he did pour some kind of poison in the juice, Jin's detox buff should take care of that. So, no worries there. Should he at least give it a go and have a taste then? He used the straw stuck in the tumbler and took a long sip before his eyes opened wider. Hey, it's tasty. It was here that he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. Hunter Neem! He turned around to see Jino walking towards him. Jino still had that bright face as usual, but he was also pointing in the direction where Ki Chol disappeared to with his chin. Hunter Neem, who was that just now? He'd been standing here for a while, you know. Jin's reply was pretty simple. An insurance salesman. Aha. Being a positive-minded guy, Jino accepted this explanation right away. Jin looked around the vicinity and asked, Where's your van? If he saw Ki Chol standing here, that meant Jino had arrived quite a while ago, too. But strangely enough, the kid's favorite van was nowhere to be seen. I parked it way over there, Hunter Neem. Hyung Nim? Not Hunter Neem, but Hyung Nim. Hyung Nim. Hyung Nim! Sorry, I got Hunter Neem mixed up. Hyung Nim! Young Nim, who was that just now? He's been standing here for a while, you know? And then back over to the rest of it. Sorry about that. I parked it way over there, young Nim. But why? Well, you know, there's been a series of unsolved homicides taking place around these parts, yes? I'm not from around here, and people were beginning to suspect me and stuff, so... Jin nodded his head. Those murders were brought up frequently on the local news lately. The victims were mostly young women. There had been 2 murders this month already. And then there was an unknown black van parked right in front of the apartment building. Of course the residents would become fearful and anxious. It was here that the veggie juice was finally finished. Jin lightly shook around the empty tumbler before walking towards where the van was supposedly parked. Let's go. Okay, young Nim. Lizard men came out in this dungeon. As their name indicated, they were literally bipedal lizards. I was about to say lizards. Bipedal lizards. They walked on 2 legs, wielded weapons, and even resorted to flinging around magic attacks, too. The number of lizard man mages was low, though. However, they were rather cumbersome to deal with in turn. For instance, 2 balls of flames erupted near the tips of the lizard man mage's hands. Magic? When Jin tried to get closer, the 2 lizard men protecting the mage stabbed their spears at him. Indeed, what quick reflexes befitting reptiles. Jin jumped rearward and barely missed the spear tips. Right away, the balls of flame flew at him. Swish! Swoosh! Young Nim, watch out! Jino cried out from his position a lot of distance away. Kaboom! Along with a huge explosion, the narrow cavern-like dungeon shook around noticeably. And that is the end of Chapter 43. Onwards to Chapter 44. We're getting to the halfway mark. I'll take a short break with the halfway mark, and then we'll pick up with the remaining chapters. Same as usual. Chapter 44. The choking smoke filled up the interior of the dungeon. And by doing that, I gave myself the hiccups again. Jino covered his nose with the back of his wrist and loudly coughed out. However, he was far more worried about Jin at the moment. The firepower of the lizard man mage was that strong. Fortunately, Jin rapidly emerged from the smoke completely unscathed, meaning there was no need to worry in the first place. Jino inwardly exclaimed out in admiration. As expected of young Nim! Jin was able to evade the attacks of the lizard men, reputedly the hardest monsters to deal with in dungeons rank C, without getting a single hair disturbed. Not only that, from a mage too. From Jino's perspective, it was as if Jin was getting faster every day. I must be imagining things, right? Meanwhile, Jin spat out pieces of rubble that somehow found their way inside his mouth. The color of his saliva landing on the ground was black. These bastards. He became really ticked off by the fact that he had to breathe in unhealthy smoke because of a lone lizard and its cheap tricks, and his dissatisfaction could be seen clearly in his expression. Jin was frowning deeply now.
You've used skilled intimidation.
His angrily glaring eyes shot out powerful, murderous intent.
Effect: fear has been activated. All stats of the targets will be reduced by 50% for 1 minute.
The lizard man began panicking grandly after being exposed to his powerful murderous intent. Jin didn't miss this chance and threw the poison fang of Kasaka with everything he had. The dagger flew in a dead straight line and splendidly pierced the forehead of one of the lizard spearmen. Stab! The speed of Jin's flying dagger was too fast for a weakened monster to evade. The remaining spearman roared out in anger after witnessing the death of its comrade. However, Jin was no longer standing where the creature's spear was pointing at.
Surukanganaka!
And I'm reading out what they're actually saying.
Surukanganaka!
The lizard man mage cried out nervously.
Surukanaka!
When the mage repeated the same words as before, the spearman turned around to face the mage and roared out,
Suruka!
The spearman bared its fangs and approached the mage in a threatening manner. However, the mage didn't back down either.
Suruik!
It happened then.
Ah!
Suddenly, the spearman's chest burst open. The mage's face was now covered in blood. It cried out in alarm and hurriedly took several steps back.
Suruak!
The stealth slowly came undone, and the spear stabbing through the chest of the lizard spearman revealed itself. The man holding that spear was, of course, Jin. When he let go of the shaft, both the spear and the lizard man that got skewered by it crashed to the ground simultaneously. Thud! In the meantime, and not only that, but I am completely forgetting that you guys are supposed to be on screen right now. I got so caught up into reading that I didn't even notice that. My bad, everybody. Well, it's a good thing this is audio only. Sorry about that. I didn't even display you guys off to the side. When he let go of the shaft, both the spear and the lizard man that got skewered by it crashed to the ground simultaneously. Thud! In the meantime, Jin rapidly recovered his poison fang of Kasuga from the head of the other lizard spearman.
Suruik!
Red beams of light appeared again in the hands of the lizard man mage. However, Jin didn't give it time to complete its action. Dash! The distance between Jin and the mage disappeared in an instant. The mage's repulsive-looking reptilian eyes grew really wide. Jin ducked and avoided the flames erupting out from the mage, slid to the monster's rear, and stabbed his dagger near the target's spinal area.
Vital points targeting.
Stab! The mage cried out in pain. But when Jin stabbed again, the following scream wasn't as lengthy as the previous one. Stab! The lizard man spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed forward. Plop. Jin inwardly punched the air. No matter who judged it, that was an excellent victory for sure. Very nice. As if to congratulate him on his victory, he could hear the system's crisp mechanical beep ring inside his head.
Ding! Level up. Player has reached the required level.
A strange message followed right after the familiar one. Required level. Having only heard this simple message, he couldn't figure out what was going on here. But by the time the following mechanical beep rang, Jin ended up expending a huge amount of willpower just to calm his heart that beat so hard that to the point of causing him pain.
Class change quest is now available. Will you take on the class change quest now? Yes or no?
Class change quest. He was so focused on raising his levels and his stats that he had been forgetting all about a certain column in his status window. Name Sung Jinu. Level 40. Class none. Indeed, that was the third column in his sorry, it was a misspell here. Indeed, that was the third column in his status window, the class. And now he was given an opportunity to replace that none with another word. He'd be given a class. In most video games, a character would receive many benefits after getting a class. It'd be no different with the system, since it operated almost the same as a game. His heart was beating harder and faster now. When he realized he'd be one step closer to the goal of being strong after going through with this quest, He simply could not calm himself down anymore.
Will you take on the class change quest now? Yes or no?
Yes and no continued to flicker in front of his eyes. Of course I would. What kind of an idiot would refuse such an opportunity? Jin was about to choose yes and take on the quest to change his class. However, he stopped almost instinctively. No, hang on a sec. Who knew just what kind of a quest might show up here? Following right after the notice from his instincts, the warning bells from his brain rang true and clear inside his head. I'm in a dungeon. A dungeon was one of the most dangerous places in the world, even though he was fully accustomed to the rank C dungeons by now. A dungeon was still a dungeon after all. There was no reason for him to increase the risk even more. Besides, Jinno was standing next to him as well. It wasn't as if he didn't trust the kid, no. Still, he didn't have any particular reason to let the kid in on the existence of the system or explain the weird phenomenon that might occur when he changed his class. Things would get too complicated in this way. And also, the content of the quest might end up hurting Jinho too. What if strong monsters suddenly appeared out of thin air? Well, that would be more preferable, actually. Because he'd only have to kill those monsters and that would be the end. But a quest asking for something more than that could show up. For instance, something similar to those 2 emergency quests he had to complete in the past. Yeah, the goal of the quest could be to eliminate the nearest hunters. It was a distinct possibility. Sure, it was nothing but speculation at this point in time, but still. Still possessing an excellent sense of timing, Jinno walked over and called out to him. Young Nim! The magic that the lizard man mage flung about must have landed pretty close to him because he was covered from top to bottom in dust. Just how did you do that? Disappearing and reappearing again? Did you have a skill like that before? Jinno's eyes sparkled brightly as he spoke. He looked really pumped up, too. He must have found the rare skill stealth really mystifying or some such. Well, I find your appearance far more mystifying, kid. Instead of a reply, Jin pulled out a handkerchief from his inventory. He got this as a reward from the daily quest. Young Nim? Jin used that cloth to mercilessly rub Jinno's face. The previously white handkerchief was now dyed jet black. Jinno took a look at the fabric and only then realized what the state of his face was like. He embarrassedly retreated to a corner and carefully wiped his face clean. Hey, Jinno. Yes, young Nim? Something urgent just came up. Jinno quickly raised his head. Are you planning to leave now? After we finish up here. Okay, understood. Then I'll cancel our bookings for the remaining gates. Jinno couldn't show it in front of Jin, but he was feeling rather pained about the 3 gates that had been booked by him. My funds are running out quickly, too. Jinno didn't have any method to earn money, so the allowances he got were basically everything he had. He was doing this without his father's knowledge, so the amount of cash he could shift around was limited. If he had to cancel the bookings, then he wouldn't get refunds on the booking fees he paid in advance. It was the same as him throwing money away. So how could he not feel pained about this? Also, because of this unusual method of clearing gates, he ended up spending more than usual for today's raids. But now, he had to throw away his investment just like that. Jinno's shoulders couldn't help but droop real low, almost instinctively. However, Jin replied with an unmoved expression. Why are you canceling our bookings and wasting money like that? Jinno tilted his head. Pardon? If we don't enter a gate within 2 days of booking it, our permit will be automatically rescinded, young Nim. Of course, Jin already knew something like that. Leave them to me. I'll sort them out. Did Jin think of a good way to resolve this? Jinno was curious, but at the same time he felt relieved as well. Inside the headquarters of the White Tiger Guild,
Chief On, just what on earth were you thinking?
a loud roar reverberated.
Chief On, just what on earth were you thinking?
A loud roar reverberated within the offices of the 2nd Division. The owner of that roar was Baek Yoon Ho. He was none other than the master of the White Tiger Guild and its CEO as well. It could never be a good thing if a CEO-level character made his way down to the lower floors to make his ire known to his staff members.
What the? How can any of this make sense? How can there be no gates to train our new recruits? Don't you realize you've delayed the training schedule by 4 days already?
All the employees within the 2nd Division lowered their heads. They all looked anxious, wondering if they would be caught, if they would also end up in the crosshair. Chief Sang-min, too, lowered his head as Baek Yoon-ho continued to point and shout at him. Sang-min wasn't dumb enough or inexperienced enough to tick off his superior officer even further by replying to every little thing being said in the way Ki-chol would have done. In cases like this, keeping his mouth shut was for the best. Whether the boss man knew Sang-min's thoughts or not, Baek angrily shook around the report from the 2nd Division that showed up on his desk this morning.
You're using this as an excuse? The other team paid far higher bids so we can't book a single gate? Are you saying our guild lacks enough funds? Or is the other party being supported by a bloody billionaire or something?
Sang-min's lips twitched real hard just then, but he endured like a champ and didn't say anything. He made a promise to Jin, after all.
If I open my mouth now, I'd end up blabbering about Jinno and Sung Jinno.
Not knowing the pained inner thoughts of Sang-min, Baek continued to roar at the top of his lungs, loud enough to shake the entire office.
I don't care whether it's 100 million, 200, just book the darn gates! Do you understand me?
It happened then. Suddenly, Sang-min's phone began ringing loudly.
I'm sorry. I couldn't answer you earlier. I was meeting a friend. Shy.
When he sneaked a glance at his phone to confirm who the caller was, Sang-min's eyes grew really wide.
Sir, I need to answer this call.
The 2nd Division's main role was to recruit new talents, and nothing was more important to them than good timing. And Sang-min was the chief of that 2nd Division. Even if Sang-min had made a big blunder, no matter how angry Baek got, stopping him from answering that call was not a smart thing to do.
What are you doing, Chief On? Answer it quickly.
Baek Yoon-ho consented to it with an unhappy voice. Sang-min bowed his head slightly, asking Yoon-ho for his understanding, and he quickly answered the call.
Hello, I'm Sang-min from the White Tiger Guild speaking.
While Sang-min was answering the call, Yoon-ho crossed his arms and waited for it to end.
Yes, I understand. If you're waiting for us by the ground floor cafe, I shall go there right away. Yes, see you then.
Sang-min ended the call and quickly spoke up.
Sir, looks like I'll have to go downstairs for a moment.
Sang-min was the ace of the 2nd Division. If such a man was getting ready to rush downstairs with only one phone call, even when he was facing his boss's fury...
By any chance, was that call related to scouting someone?
Yes, sir. Seeing that confident, assured face of Sang-min, Yoon-ho realized that something major was going on here.
Chief On is personally trying to scout this person?
Which could only mean that the other guy was someone extraordinary, right? Baek's angrily crumpled visage reverted back to a smiling one in an instant.
How can I stand in the way of our scouting specialist trying to do his job? Don't worry about the matters up here and do your best downstairs.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 44. Onwards to chapter 45. Sangmin lowered his head again, and then he hurriedly issued an order to Ki Chul.
Vice Chief Yun, get the contract documents ready.
Yes, Chief.
Their preparation was done in the blink of an eye. After the duo hurriedly left the offices, Yun-ho sneaked in a question to a male employee next to him.
What's going on here? Just what kind of an assignment could make Chief An roll his sleeves up and jump in personally like this?
The male employee sent a pleading look to a female colleague next to him, asking silently for any form of assistance. Unfortunately, even she shook her head.
I also don't know,
said her eyes.
Dang it!
The male employee hesitated for a bit before he finally gave in and answered with great difficulty while scratching the back of his head. Well, sir, the thing is, none of us. He expected the boss to throw an almighty hissy fit, but then, quite unexpectedly, the boss didn't say anything else.
So he's involved in something so secretive that he can't even tell his own people? Is that it?
Yun-ho slowly rubbed his chin. The person who had contributed a great deal in building up the White Tiger Guild to its current size and power was none other than Chief An Sung-min. If someone like that was throwing all his focus on this matter, then
will our Chief An once more reel in a big fish?
A huge smile slowly bloomed on Big Yun-ho's face.
Why the heck is this coffee so bitter?
Jin frowned deeply. He was thinking of the vending machine's coffee's taste when ordering a cup of espresso at the cafe. But heck, rather than calling this coffee, it was much more fitting to label it as a really bitter traditional medicine instead. And it cost way too much for what it was.
Man, 6,000 won can buy me several canned coffee, you know.
He began wondering just how many sticks of sugar he needed to pour into this bitter bastard in order to make it taste about the same as the canned coffee. But then...
Kring!
The door to the cafe opened, and the duo of An Sang-min and Hyung Ki-cheol rushed inside. Over here. Jin raised his hand. Sang-min and Ki-cheol quickly took a sweeping look around the cafe, and when they discovered Jin, their complexions brightened in an instant. Their expressions resembled that of Huang-bu sawing the gourd brought by the swallow. And, Huang-bu is the main character of an old Korean novel, Huang-bu and Nol-bu.
We honestly didn't expect to see you again so soon.
Sang-min greeted like so and sat opposite to Jin, while Hyung Ki-cheol made a quick greeting with a nod and settled down next to a superior officer. Jin also nodded his head lightly at his greeting. The old saying went, "Make hay while the sun still shines." So Sang-min pulled out the contract as soon as settling down.
For the terms we can offer you, we can negotiate.
His ardent desire to get the contract signed quickly was quite easy to see. Unfortunately for him, Jin cut him off rather decisively.
I didn't come here today to talk about signing with you folks.
Sang-min's hands froze in mid-action of pulling out the contract. Ki-cheol also looked quite confused as well. Sang-min axed in the frozen position as if someone had pressed the pause button.
Well then, what brings you to our White Tiger Guild?
His expectation had been great, and so was the ensuing disappointment. The biggest find of the year walked into the guild with his own 2 feet, but he refused to sign the contract the moment he clapped his eyes on it. Could he have changed his mind in the meantime? As the duo's confusion grew, Jin calmly spoke to them.
I came here to help you two.
Pardon me?
Excuse me?
The reactions of Sang-min and Ki-cheol were roughly the same. 2 men exchanged glances. before shifting their gaze over the Jin. In a complete contrast to their flustered state, Jin remained utterly calm. I remember you mentioning your troubles regarding the training of your new recruits, because my raid team swept away all the available rank C dungeons in the area.
That's correct. Well, we can't really take the newbies to a high rank dungeon just because we couldn't book a rank C gate after all.
That's why I'm here today.
Sangmin tilted his head slightly. Forgive me, but I can't seem to.
Jin thought this was enough of him beating around the bush, so he got to the main topic. I want to sell the raid permits for 3 of the rank C gates my raid team acquired. Kicho let off a short gasp. The 2 men from the White Tiger Guild finally figured out what Jin really wanted from them.
If you really wanted to help us out, then wouldn't it be simpler just to not book gates anymore?
Jin shook his head. Unfortunately, I have some matters that require the continued clearing of rank C gates for the time being.
Well then, why today?
Jin smiled refreshingly. I'm here because I wanted to help you out of your troubles. Should the duo believe those words at their face value? Just before the calculator inside Sangmin's head could start crunching some numbers, Jin continued on with his explanations. Of course, I'm being considerate only for today. We also can't delay our operations as well, you see. If you miss this chance, I'm pretty sure that it'll only get harder to book rank C gates for the foreseeable future. For some reason, he came across as a host of a home shopping channel, alerting his viewers to the looming end of the discount period. Sangmin fell into a dilemma. Gates didn't just appear in and around the capital city only. If they couldn't book one around here, there was an option of going to the countryside and training the rookies there. However, there was a good chance of earning the ire of the local guilds and the raid teams by doing that. That wasn't all either. Doing that would be like giving ammunition to large guilds located in the countryside, like the Shining Star located in Honam, or the Night Order in Yeongnam, to ridicule the White Tiger. In other words, his guild could be swaddled with the ignorable reputation of a poorly run organization that couldn't even train their rookies in their own backyard.
Can we claim that it's an undeserved reputation even?
Because it was clearly true, after all. Whatever the case may be, which rookie would want to join a guild that was being roundly ridiculed by other famous guilds? Me and words today. I need to get some water. This was one of the reasons why the guild's public image was really important.
Okay.
After a lengthy deliberation, Sangmin came to a conclusion.
Please sell us the permits. 3 rank C gates should be enough for our needs. How much are you thinking for all 3 of them?
The White Tiger Guild had a really deep pocket. However, nothing good would come out of trying to compare their financial muscle with Yujin Constructions. And just as importantly, he feared souring the relationship with Jin the most, so he'd not even try to compete at the end of the day. But now, Jin was actually volunteering to hand over the gates. So shouldn't this be something to be grateful about? Unfortunately, he couldn't be grateful for the proposed prices, though. 300 million won per gate, so 900 million for all 3. Both Sangmin and Kicho spat out pained, shocked gasps at the same time.
That's too much.
Kicho tried to interject, but Sangmin quickly stopped him. Something like this also happened the last time they met. Jin ended the talks without an ounce of hesitation once his price couldn't be met. In a way, this was a great opportunity that rolled onto their laps. If they failed to grasp this chance, then either they only get to book a rank C gate a really long time from now, or, in the worst case scenario, go to the countryside to train their rookies.
Well, at least I should try negotiating properly today.
Ending the talks this quickly would only leave the bitter taste in his mouth. Still, a gate priced 300 million each was just too expensive. Yu Jino's bid for the raid permits averaged around 100 million won lately. Asking 3 times that amount was just being too unreasonable. Surely Jin would know this too.
I'm sure he's thinking of starting at a high enough number and gradually come down.
Now that he thought about it, he recalled the words Baek Yoon-ho had said before they left the office.
I don't care whether it's 100 million, 200 million, just book the darn gates, do you understand me?
This was the same thing as the CEO giving his consent. Plus, every employee working in the second division heard those words, so Yoon-ho wouldn't be able to pretend his way out of this one either. Sang-min swallowed his saliva, I think that's about 4 now, and put up his counteroffer.
3 million is too large as an amount. 3 million is 300 million is too large an amount even for us. So how about 200 million and
I accept. Even before Sang-min could finish his sentence, Jin reached out with his right hand. With a slightly dazed face, Sang-min reached out as well and shook the offered hand.
Are you okay with this?
Yes, 200 million won for each rank C gate. Please deposit the money into this bank account. It kind of felt like the situation got resolved way too fast. But, well, from Sang-min's perspective, this should count as a fortunate thing indeed. It's the 4th counter. Had a feeling it was, Mihai, thank you. Had to confirm. It kind of felt like the situation got resolved way too fast. But, well, from Sang-min's perspective, this should count as a fortunate thing indeed. Sang-min lightly shook Jin's hand and bowed his head as well.
I'm grateful for this. Thank you.
You're being too kind. Jin also formed a bright smile. Sang-min inwardly thought that he'd be able to breathe a little bit easier now. For the time being, he was able to resolve the situation with training the new recruits, and his relationship with Jin had improved, ever so slightly as well.
Trust is the foundation of all negotiations and dealings, after all.
Indeed. Just like this, their relationship would evolve for the better, bit by bit. Sooner or later, he'd be able to reel in his catch. No one would spit at a smiling face, and no one would pretend to not notice when someone gave you a present. Sang-min inwardly clenched his fist. Meanwhile, Jin stood up from his seat first. Now that that's been sorted, I should get going. I'll see you around. Oh, and here. Jin handed over a shopping bag containing an empty tumbler to its original owner. Thanks for the drink. I really enjoyed it.
I'm happy to hear that you liked it, Mr. Sung.
With a slightly reddened face, Gi-chol accepted the shopping bag. With that, Jin exited from the cafe. After he got to a far enough distance away from Sang-min and Gi-chol, Jin gave Yu Jin-oh a call. A short bout of poppy music ringtone later, Jin-oh's clearly excited voice came out from the speaker. Jin quietly smiled in satisfaction. This transaction was a resounding success. He managed to sell off raid permits at double the price of what they paid for before they became useless junk. This was a huge profit for them. Jin-oh asked him in a mystified voice, "That's my trade secret." Enjoy your break, and see you in 2 days' time. While Jin-oh was getting flustered on the other side, Jin simply ended the call. Click. Later on the same day, the 2nd Division's office. Ki Chol was urgently seeking out Sang Min.
Chief! Chief!
What's wrong?
Sang Min tore his eyes away from his computer monitor. Ki Chol pointed to his phone screen with an urgent expression on his face.
You gotta take a look at this, Chief.
What's going on now? Sang Min looked at the screen and his eyes narrowed to a slit.
Is it this?
The screen showed the section of the Hunters Association's website that only the hunters had access to. To be more precise, the screen showed the page which notified everyone of where the reported gates were located at, as well as allowing anyone to buy the raid permits for those gates.
What's this? Why are there so many Ring C dungeons in our district?
Not only that, each one is going for less than 10 million won at the moment as well.
No way.
Sang Min realized that something was terribly awry here.
Chino's team hasn't booked a single gate for tomorrow.
Jino's team hasn't booked a single gate for tomorrow.
Hearing Ki Chol's words, Sang Min immediately recalled what Sung Jinu told him over the phone. I have some free time on Thursday. And tomorrow was Thursday. Jino's team had no plans to go on a raid tomorrow. He didn't even know that and bought those permits at a huge premium. Huh. An amused chuckle leaked out from Sang Min's mouth. There was enough hints, but it was too late by the time he had pieced them together. This was his mistake. Well, he did succeed in cooling the anger of the CEO in the end, so it wasn't all bad.
Looks like we've been had, Chief.
It was then a text message arrived in Sang Min's phone. Ding dong. It was from Jin. With this, we're even now. I will consider your people spying on me as something that never happened.
I can't take this fellow lightly, can I?
Sang Min inwardly chuckled. If the sole sticking point between Jin and the White Tiger could be resolved in this matter, as implied by the youth, then this wouldn't necessarily be a bad trade for the guild at the end of the day. Their final aim was to scout Jin, after all. Besides, the amount they spent today wasn't all that much anyway.
Let's think of it as us investing in Sung Jinu.
It'd be nice if they were able to earn back as much as they have invested, though. Sang Min stopped looking at his phone and with a smile on his face closed the mailbox. After sending the text, Jin took one more look around his vicinity. There was absolutely no one there. Only the dense forest greeted his searching eyes. In order to make sure he'd get to enjoy a relatively safe quest, he searched for a mountainside with almost no human presence and found the most suitable candidate. The current time was 1744. There shouldn't be any hikers in this in-between hour. Plus, his current location was an empty spot of land far, far removed from any hiking trails. Time to get started. Jin accessed his mailbox.
Will you take on the class change quest now? Yes or no?
The message popped up in his view as if it had been patiently waiting for him. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of chapter 45. We have reached the halfway mark, and this is where I will take a short break to recuperate and prepare to read the remaining chapters. So, this is where I'm going to take that break, and I will be back after I am done. Also, for those listening in the future, don't worry, there won't be a long pause in here because that'll be cut out in post, and we'll just hop right into chapter 46. But yeah, going on break. Be back in a little bit, folks. Talks amongst yourselves. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am back. Sorry for the long wait. Don't worry, this will be cut out in post. Take a sip of water here. Okay. Let's get back to the chapter. Well, chapters. Chapter 46. Jin's Adam's apple bobbled up and down. Indeed, it was rather scary not knowing what kind of quests would pop up. However, his anticipation was even greater than his fears. While he was looking for a suitable location to start the quest, he used his phone to search for topics related to changing one's class online, etc., etc. They were all from video games, sure, but the accepted norm was that changing one's class would result in many benefits. And level 40 was when I could get my class. Of course, it wasn't all good news either. He often spotted ominous-sounding thread titles as he browsed through online forums. Well, these were also related to video games anyways. Is it buffering? Doesn't seem to be for me. Everything appears to be fine on my end. Yeah, everything seems to be fine on my end. Do I need to read a line again? I don't know if it's just me or if it's because there's a storm where I am. Ah, I see. You gotta be careful with those storms. Yeah, you gotta be careful with those storms. Keep me, you know what? I'll just have the stream up on my phone just so I can hear to make sure that I don't skip on anything. Let's read that line again. At level 40 was when I could get my class. Of course, it wasn't all good news either. He often spotted ominous-sounding thread titles as he browsed through online forums. Well, these were also related to video games anyways. He certainly had far less worry about here since he only used daggers as his main weapon until now. All the skills he had acquired leaned towards the profession of assassin. Right. I've got dagger techniques and stealth as my skills. Not only that, he invested mainly in raising the stats of strength and agility, so it was kind of hard to imagine getting another class other than assassin. As his thoughts arrived here, Jin summoned the poison fang of Kasuga from his inventory. Shoo! This feeling of the hilt falling so perfectly in his hand. Yeah, this for me is the most comfortable. He nodded his head like a wise old sage. While gripping the dagger slightly, Jin shifted his gaze towards the message floating in the air. Well then, now that he was all done with getting ready for any unexpected events, he firmed his resolve and answered the message.
Will you take on the class change quest now? Yes or no?
Yes, I'm taking it on. The moment he thought of taking on the quest, another message popped into his view.
Ring! You're now partaking in the class change quest. A new dungeon will be generated for this quest.
Generating? A new dungeon? Before he had the chance to interpret what that message was saying, a change took place before him really fast. A black hole formed right in front of his eyes. That was merely the beginning, too. The black hole, the size of a bean, expanded to the size of a coin, then to that of a volleyball, and eventually, it grew large enough for a person to walk through. Isn't this... Jin's eyes grew wider. He was expecting to see a new message with the contents of the quest pop up in front of his eyes. But this... What appeared before him was, without a doubt, a gate. To think, a gate would show up here. This one didn't seem any different from the ones he was familiar with, only that it was a bit smaller than usual. The system sent him a new message as if to urge him on.
Please enter the dungeon through the gate.
I need to calm down. Jin quickly collected himself. Right. If he thought about it, there wasn't much of a difference whether he used a key or a gate to enter a dungeon. Indeed, he was simply taken aback just how by the sight of a gate forming artificially like this. Oh, he was taken aback just now by the sight of a gate forming artificially like this. Also, this would be his first time seeing a gate form. He always just walked into one that was already there, so... When the chain of his thoughts stopped there, a new question popped into his head and popped into his mind. Hang on. Can other hunters enter this gate as well? Too bad. He had no method to experiment on this one today. Well, there were no hunters nearby that he could call for assistance, nor did he have anyone who would rush over here because he gave them a call. He momentarily recalled Jino's face, but slowly shook his head. How will I take care of the aftermath if I called him and something bad happens? It was then, as if to urge him on again, the message blinked.
Ding! Please enter the dungeon through the gate.
The mechanical beep brought him back to his senses. He slapped his cheeks a couple of times to wake himself up. This is no time to daydream. If he succeeded, then a new class and all the rewards that followed would be his. And if he failed, then he couldn't even tell what might happen to him. So, he needed to focus here. Phew. After taking a deep breath, Jin held the poison fang of Kasuga in reverse grip and entered the gate.
You have entered the dungeon.
Eh? He entered in a state of taut tension, but to his surprise, there was nothing here. He was greeted by the sight of an ordinary cave-like dungeon. Isn't this exactly the same as the others? He heard that high-ranking dungeons were often linked to other worlds, so he was kind of worried about such a thing happening to him. But thankfully, he was spared from that. Instead, a strange message popped up into his view.
Ring! The current location forbids the usage of potions as well as the functions of the store, and your physical state will not recover even if you level up.
Jin confirmed that there was no presence of monsters nearby and put away his dagger. Then his head began tilting this way and that. This isn't going to be easy, is it? Maybe because his class change was up for grabs, there were quite a few restrictions here to contend with. The most important one was that he couldn't replenish his spent energy or stamina and couldn't heal himself using potions or level ups. The damage will stack, in other words. If he got injured, then that would spell his doom. Since he couldn't heal himself, he had no choice but to be thorough and cautious with every action he took. Meaning, I gotta keep my wits about me. Jin closed the message. And as he'd do every time when entering a dungeon, he confirmed the presence of the exit.
You can't leave until the class change process has been concluded.
A message popped up as soon as he touched the surface of the gate. He put some strength behind his hand, but it didn't even budge. Jin retracted his hand. The exit is blocked off. An unknown grade, impossible to heal himself, and no exit. This dungeon was a pretty risky proposition. Even a hunter with balls of steel wouldn't want to tread in a place like this one. However, high risk doesn't always equate to bad things, does it? Indeed, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. He learned that through experience. If clearing this place was difficult because of all the restrictions, then didn't that also mean there was an amazing opportunity waiting for him at the end? There was only one way to find out. I'll know once I get there. Jin took his first step forward. His eyes gazed far forward, and all he could see was a cavern-like passageway with seemingly no end. And there were no monsters nearby. Wait, since this is within the system's influence, should I call them monsters and not monsters? Even though they both meant the same thing. In any case, that wasn't the only difference to consider. There were lit torches lined up at a fixed interval along the cavern walls as well. Instead of luminous stones, I got torches, huh? Unfortunately, the light from the torches was not an effective source of illumination. No matter how many there were, they were still not enough to light up the entire passageway. So, there were plenty of hidden shadows. With the deafening silence being accompanied by the gloomy shadows, this place came off far more eerie and ominous than a regular dungeon. I can see no problem, but still. Should he say it's down to the atmosphere of this place? Jin pulled out the nearest torch and held it. His front brightened ever so slightly with the torch in his hand. Yeah, this is better. Jin formed a satisfied smile. He took one last glance behind him and slowly made his way forward, the torch lighting the way. When he walked for a long time, he finally got to a bend in the passageway, and just beyond it, he sensed multiple presences. Are they finally here? Jin carefully placed the torch on the ground and stood back up. His right hand was now holding his favorite dagger instead. He briefly entertained the idea of using stealth to quickly deal with his enemies, but gave up on that after remembering the crazy expenditure of his mana. Well, he wouldn't be able to use potions to replenish the spent mana in this place after all. If he carelessly spent mana here, then he might not be able to use the necessary skills when he really needed to. It's coming this way. Jin pressed tightly against the wall and waited for the enemy to show up around the bend. Clank, clank. Whenever this thing took a step, the metallic clang reverberated loudly in the passageway. The noises were getting closer. Clank, clank. Hearing that strange noise, Jin tilted his head. Could it be carrying some kind of chained weapons? He was curious, but there was no need to be anxious. He'd get his answers soon enough. 5, 4, 3. Jin tightly held the dagger in the reverse grip and stopped breathing. It was to prevent the opponent from hearing the sound of his breaths. 2, 1. Clank, clank. Finally, the enemy's shadow could be seen. 0. When his countdown hit 0, the enemy revealed itself. Jin aimed for the side of its neck. Clang! But he got to hear metal hitting metal instead. The blade didn't go in. Metal armor? Jin's eyes widened. Finally confirming the identity of his opponent, Jin quickly took several steps back. It's a human? He was now facing a knight decked out fully in a suit of armor. Its face was hidden behind the helmet, and he couldn't see what they looked like. Jin called out to it while thinking to himself, could it be? Could it be? Oi! However, the knight didn't even utter a word and simply lunged in Jin's direction. Thud, thud, thud! The knight rushed forward like a raging bull and tried to shoulder tackle him, but Jin lightly tilted out of the way and evaded the attack. The knight couldn't win against the momentum and continued to run forward for a bit longer before somehow bringing itself to a stop. Maybe it's not human? He was able to take a quick peek at a close distance and he could tell something was off. He couldn't sense the beating heart that a normal person should possess. so most likely it was not human. He was now facing off against a type of monster he'd never even heard of before. A monster that armed itself from head to toe, no less. It's like... Wasn't this like he was actually fighting against another person? Shooting! The knight turned around and unsheathed the sword mounted on its hips. Just as Jin had done, this knight probably didn't plan on letting him go alive. After sensing its intense hostility, Jin's glare became a level sharper. Dash!
Your movement speed has increased by 40%.
The first one to strike wins. Before the enemy made its move, Jin dashed in first. Shing! Jin evaded the hurried swing of the knight's longsword and stabbed his dagger at various points in its armor. Clang, clang, clang! Unfortunately, he couldn't damage it. The armor's too thick. Not only was it thick, the surface was smooth as well, so when he landed a straight blow, the blade didn't go in but simply slid off to the side. It was at this point that the knight swung its sword in a huge arc. Shoo! Oh, Kitty's here. Hello. Sorry, I didn't look at chat. Apologies for that. It's good to see you. Came in at a good point. You did indeed. We are currently on chapter 46. Jin ducked lower and evaded it. The blade swung past Jin's head by a hair's breadth. A big move like this would inevitably expose a big opening. Another chance had come by. Jin lunged in closer to the knight and gathered his strength in his dagger-holding arm. Vital points targeting. Crack! The tip of the dagger penetrated past the armor. Did it work? However, it must have not suffered any damage since it swung its sword down vertically with great force, not caring at all about the dagger stuck to its side. Jin rapidly threw himself back. Clang! The blade slammed into the ground and sparks flew everywhere. Don't mind me, the spot is epic. Hehehehe. The blade slammed into the ground and sparks flew everywhere. Jin took several steps back and corrected his posture. His dagger remained stuck to the knight's side. Tch. Jin clicked his tongue. It's not really that strong, is it? That was his earnest assessment. Probably because of all that heavy armor, its movement was dull and its attack pattern was also rather simple too. Only that its defense against bladed weapons was truly exceptional. Jin rolled up his sleeves. Well, I've already fought against an enemy with thick armor that blades can't penetrate. His relaxed demeanor came from previous experience. The boss monster, poison-fanged Blue Kasaka, that broke a steel sword infused with magical energy in one hit, he had experienced killing such a snake before. Compared to the Kasaka, that thing is nothing. A thin smile slowly formed on Jin's lips, since that was a pretty good memory to recall. Thud, thud, thud! The knight stupidly charged in again, perhaps trusting the protection provided by its armor. I knew it. It's a really simple creature. Jin easily evaded the knight's attack aimed at his shoulder, slid to its back, and caught it in a headlock. Crack! Since its neck area was also protected by armor, it not choked to death. But... Crack! Crumple. Jin's arm muscles expanded and veins bulged. Jin wasn't planning to choke the knight to begin with. He gritted his teeth, his eyes shooting up open wide, and when that happened, crack! Along with a pretty sickening noise, the helmet was ripped off. This was the moment when his strength stat exceeding 100 points had begun shining ever so brightly. I did it! The knight lifelessly knelt down on the ground once its head was separated from the body. Thud!
You defeated the knight.
A simple but concise message announcing the end of the battle popped up. A flickering light indicating the presence of loot came from somewhere on the armor, but Jin's attention was elsewhere. What the heck? There's nothing inside. The helmet he held in his hands was totally empty. He quickly checked inside the armor to make sure, but it was the same story. Empty. Does that mean I was fighting against a suit of armor that was moving by itself? Just as he arrived at his conclusion, 2 more knights rushed into view from around the bend. It seemed that they had belatedly sensed the unfolding battle. Clang, clang. The knights discovered Jin, and as if they had made a prior arrangement, they unsheathed their longswords in unison. Jin tossed the empty helmet away and loosened the muscles on his neck and shoulders. He now knew how to fight these things. So this is the real beginning, huh? Thud, 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 thud! Jin's lips formed a slight grin as he stared at the knights rushing towards him. His first step in clearing this dungeon proved to be on the right track. And that is the end of chapter 46. Allow me to grab my phone charger to charge my phone real quick while I have chat up, and then we'll start with chapter 47. Alright, phone is charging. We're good now. The index has us at 118 degrees. Goodness. I cannot wait for it to be fall. This heat wave has been crazy. But that was the end of chapter 46. Onwards to chapter 47. We're almost done. Chapter 47. Was it because of all the restrictions? The loot drop rate turned out to be rather excellent. Jin only defeated 3 knights, yet 2 of them dropped an item each. As far as percentages go, that was 66.6%. It was an undeniably high drop rate compared to other instant dungeons, like the drop rate of Borderlands 3 compared to Borderlands 1 and 2. Especially considering the fact that when all he got after clearing a floor of an instant dungeon several times in a row would be a few Japtem and stuff he had no use for other than to sell them off at the store.
Item. Superior Knight's breastplate has been found. Take it?
Of course I'm taking it. Just a thought, and the breastplate of the now headless knight kneeling and unmoving on the ground disappeared and reappeared right before his feet. And its information popped up in his view.
Item. Superior Knight's breastplate. Rarity. B. Type. Armor. Reduction in physical damage plus 7%. Your movement will slow down if your strength is below 80. 7% increase in physical damage reduction.
7% increase in physical damage reduction. When added to what he had already, the physical damage reduction would be 27%. Sorry, it had an exclamation point. The inflection was wrong. When added to what he had already, the physical damage reduction would be 27%. If this number reaches 100%, does that mean I become completely impervious to all physical damage? He briefly wondered about that before realizing that a defensive item ranked B in rarity only added 7% to the overall value, and his thoughts rapidly changed. Even if he found himself an item with a rarity of A, the reduction may not go above 30 to 40%. So maybe it was impossible to add up to 100%? Still, Every little bit helps, so.
He was sure of benefiting greatly if he continued to increase that stat bit by bit. He already had witnessed the power of good items through Yu Jin O, after all.
So, I do it like this, right?
Jin picked up the breastplate. As expected, a message regarding equipping the armor popped up in his view.
Will you equip item Superior Knight's breastplate?
No matter who looked at it, this breastplate's design was rather clunky and embarrassing, and he'd never wear it in public. If he didn't have prior experience with the Gatekeeper's necklace, he might have hesitated a great deal before reluctantly agreeing to put it on. But now, it was a different story now.
Yes.
Item Superior Knight's breastplate has been equipped.
The breastplate disappeared from the view. Jin summoned the status window and confirmed his stats.
Reduction in physical damage 27%.
So, it really went up.
Jin felt around his chest area. He couldn't feel anything weird. He moved his body around this and that, but didn't feel anything strange or out of place. It was exactly the same as when he equipped the Gatekeeper's necklace for the first time.
Nice.
Jin shifted his gaze over to the unmoving knight stuck in the distant corner. It was bent and crumpled so badly that nothing looked salvageable, but still, the flickering light indicating the loot's presence could be seen on it quite clearly.
Item Leather pouch has been found. Take it.
Of course, he was the one responsible for that, but even he had to concede that he had gone a bit overboard there. He fought barehanded, and well, it was really hard to control his strength. That was why. With a solemn expression on his face, Jin walked closer and reached out to take the loot.
Acquire it.
Item Leather pouch has been opened. 30,000 gold is inside. 30,000 gold has been acquired.
Huh?
Nothing entered his hands, yet he got a message declaring that he acquired some gold instead.
Was it a bit different from regular items?
Jin remained somewhat mystified as he accessed his inventory, and sure enough, his gold amount had really increased by 30,000.
Current gold 863,400.
I got 30,000 gold in one go?
Was it because knights were supposed to be wealthy or some such? He abruptly remembered that most humanoid-type monsters usually gave out more loot than any other types in video games. Now that he thought about it some more, not finding a great number of useful items on a human being, when compared to an animal or an insect, didn't make a whole lot of sense, now did it? He couldn't be sure if this dungeon followed that principle or not, though. In any case, it could only be good news to him. He was planning to save up more gold and buy a few items from the store. And if gold kept showing up as loot in this fashion, then his planned shopping day would arrive much sooner than his initial estimation.
Is there anything else that I can take with me?
Well, human greed supposedly knew no limits, so... Jin momentarily forgot about his true goal of wandering in this dungeon and greedily searched around his vicinity. The armor worn by the knights were all pretty much mangled beyond recover from the fight just now, so it was a no. Eventually, Jin's eyes found the knights' swords.
They look useful, don't they?
Those long swords must have been brand new, looking all shiny and slick like that. Although he couldn't use them properly since they weren't daggers, he could either sell them in the store, or if he couldn't, he could try hawking them off to other hunters at a later date. However, Jin picked up a sword. However, as soon as he did, the sword rapidly rusted up and dissolved into a pile of dust before scattering away.
What the heck?
This process happened in only a couple of seconds.
Is it because I'm not supposed to touch them?
What a regrettable thing this was, but naught he could do about it now. Jin dusted his hands off and picked up the torch he left on the ground. When he walked around the bend where the knight showed up from, yet another passage with no end in sight greeted him.
It looked like there was still a long way to go. These battles felt like he was revisiting schoolwork. The notion sounded funny, but that's what Jin ended up thinking, totally out of the blue. During the past 2 hours of hunting inside the dungeon, he met 4 different types of monsters: knights, mages, assassins, and archers. Is it stealth this time? An assassin type suddenly vanished from his senses. Jin didn't panic and extended his perception to its fullest, and soon enough picked up on the presence sneaking up on him from behind. Jin powerfully smacked away the assassin's dagger with his trusty poison fang of Kasaka, and seizing the opening created as the monster was pushed back, stabbed forward in a deadly and accurate attack of his own. The poison fang accurately landed in the middle of the target's chest. Stab!
You defeated the assassin. Level up.
The assassin received a fatal wound and turned into a wisp of black smoke before disappearing from his view with nary a scream. Plop! And where it once stood, only the leather clothes it used to wear remained. Why are they all humanoid-type monsters anyway? Every time he killed them, he felt as if... Jin slowly shook his head. One nice thing here was that he couldn't see the monsters' faces. Knights wore helmets, assassins and archers used deep hoods, and mages used hats attached to their robes to hide most of their face. Jin turned around to continue on his journey, but then... a flash of blinding light exploded right in front of his eyes. A mage had hidden itself and quietly completed a light magic spell. Kaboom! An ear-splitting explosion occurred next. However, Jin was already well behind the mage by the time that happened. The mage sensed his presence behind it and flinched grandly. As he hurriedly recited another chant. Too bad. Jin didn't miss this opening and swung his dagger diagonally. The mage, too, turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. Plop. Jin glared down at the ownerless robe on the ground and stored the dagger back in the inventory. I got hit by one of those, way back when I got too careless. The thing was, he was already ready to react as soon as he began sensing mana gathering around a single point. Zhou Huan's light magic. Jin wasn't dumb enough to get hit by a similar magic to that dead guy's. This was one of the reasons why he thought that all these battles were like him studying and revisiting his past fights. That's not all, is it? In order to defeat different types of monsters, he needed different stats. For knights, it was strength. For assassins, perception. Archers, agility. And finally, for mages, it was stamina. The whole thing was set up in a way that if any of the corresponding stats weren't high enough, he'd have a real hard time trying to deal with the individual monsters. If his strength was lacking, then he wouldn't have been able to cause enough damage to the knights. And if his perception was too low, he'd have gone through heck in order to locate the assassins. Me raising stats evenly has really paid off in dividends here. His intelligence stat was still on the low end, but all he had to do there was to economize his MP. Economize. All he had to do was just economize. All he had to do was economize his MP usage. That was all.
Item. Leather pouch has been opened. 20,000 gold and canteen containing lukewarm water are inside. 20,000 gold and canteen containing lukewarm water has been acquired.
Jin summoned that canteen as soon as it showed up in his inventory and took several gulps. His fatigue was piling up noticeably now. Just how far am I supposed to go here? Could there be no end to this place? Jin put the empty canteen down on the ground and placed his hands on his hips. It had been over 3 hours already since he entered this dungeon. Both his body and mind were getting fatigued now. Should I take a short break? Jin sat down and leaned against the cave wall. Status window.
Tring! Tiredness, 66.
The tiredness stat had sneaked up to a dangerous level. Above 70, his body and mind would start to get negatively affected. He needed to take a short nap and decrease that stat right away. Jin leaned his head against the wall. Sleepiness came over him almost instantly. He was so tired that even when in an environment as dangerous as this place, he didn't need a lot of effort to fall asleep. However, he heard the sharp whistle of air parting ways. Time slowed down and Jin accurately snatched the flying arrow with his hand. Grab! Jin's eyes opened up. He saw an archer knocking another arrow from some distance away. So it's still too early to fall asleep, is it? Jin summoned the poison fang of Kasuga once more and stood back up. Crunch! One single punch caused the knight's breastplate to crack and cave in. The lifeless monster slowly slid to the ground in between Jin's stretched fist and the wall. It didn't move again as it laid sprawled on the ground.
Tring! You defeated the knight. Level up.
Although it was quite unfortunate that his condition didn't recover, his levels continued to rise up steadily as he fought more and more battles. Jin looked down at his slightly skinned fist and clicked his tongue. Only a short break would have taken care of such a small wound by now. However, these abominable monsters didn't give him a moment to rest. Still, he earned quite a lot in the meantime.
Equipped items.
Gatekeeper's necklace, rank A. Superior Knight's breastplate, rank B. Intermediate Assassin's shoes, rank B. Inferior Archer's gloves, rank C. Superior Mage's ring, rank B. Other useful things he found along the way were now all safely tucked away in his inventory. It'd be nicer if I found a weapon, though. What an unfortunate thing it was. The daggers used by the assassins featured similar levels of attack bonus as the poison fang of Kasuga, but none of them possessed additional effects, so they were deemed not as good compared to his current weapon. What would this guy give me now? Jin reached out towards the fallen knight and the flickering light coming off from it.
Tring! Item, Superior Knight's Gauntlet. Rarity, B. Type, Armor. Reduction in physical damage, plus 3%. Additional effects, prevents injuries to wearer's hands. Your movements will slow down if your strength is below 80.
Oh. With a bright smile, Jin quickly acquired the Superior Knight's Gauntlet and equipped it immediately. Just like with all the other items, these metallic gloves didn't affect him in the slightest, and he could freely move his fingers. Nice. Jin moved his fingers around for a bit before raising his head to look at the far side of the passageway. Finally, the torchlight revealed the end of the road, and that end was blocked off by a huge castle gate. It was quite rare to see the boss room with a door like that. Naturally, he recalled the dual dungeon. No one was adequately prepared back then, and because of that, the losses incurred were great. However, it was different now. Jin took a look behind him at the passage he had been walking on to get here. It took me 6 hours to get here, too. His level was now 45, and he was kitted out in some good armor as well. He was ready. He wouldn't have minded taking a small break and recover some of his spent stamina, but whenever he tried to do that, monsters always managed to appear with the perfect sense of timing to disrupt his sleep. He couldn't afford to summon more monsters and waste his energy that way.
HP 4511 out of 8330. MP 660 out of 790. Tiredness 43.
I gotta win with this.
Finishing up with confirming his condition for the last time, Jin reached out and grasped the handles of the doors. The heavy-looking doors slid open rather smoothly, as if there was some sort of an unseen mechanism. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 47. Onwards to chapter 48. Chapter 48. Rumble. Boom! The door to the boss room finally opened. The interior was completely shrouded in darkness. Even with Jin's eyesight greatly enhanced by his perception stat, he found it hard to see 1 inch in front of him. All he could see clearly was the ground beneath his feet. The floor was covered in stone tiles. The ash-colored tiles, laid with no visible gaps in between, gave off this feeling of heaviness and barren chill. As soon as he set foot on this floor, countless torches lining up the walls lit up all at once and illuminated the interior.
As I thought, it's almost the same as back in that underground temple.
Jin maintained his vigilance. He scanned his vicinity and cautiously stepped forward. Several giant stone pillars stood erect to his left and right. At the far end of this room, he could see a tall throne.
It's as if
this place reminded him of the king's audience chamber from a fantasy movie. Of course, the scale was noticeably larger, though. A few steps later, the door issued a loud bang and closed shut behind him. Slam! Jin glanced back, but he didn't panic. He already expected something like that to happen. Jin resumed his careful march forward.
I can sense a powerful presence.
He kind of got this really strong gut feeling that, in order to conclude his class quest, he had to arrive before that throne. Just as important, his gut feelings on matters such as this one were on the money, most of the time. From the gap between stone pillars, which couldn't have been more than 10 steps, a doll walked out from its hiding spot and stood before him, blocking his path forward. The thing stopped its walk and turned around to face him. Jin swallowed his dry saliva. That's 5 now. He only had to take one look at the creature's red name floating just above its head to know that the boss had finally made its entrance. The Captain of the Knights, Igris the Crimson. It was a knight wearing a suit of blood-red armor. The way it was kitted out from head to toe in metal armor was similar to other knights he fought so far, but quite unlike those that looked dull and slow, this thing looked incredibly agile. What caught his eyes next was its helm. The red-colored mane extending rearwards from the top of the helm reminded him of a stallion's tail, and it left a rather deep impression. While he studied its helm, Jin discovered one more difference between it and the other knights.
This guy has eyes?
But were they eyes or irises? Whatever the case may be, the pair of silvery lights oozed out from where one's eyes should be. They felt so cold and uncaring, utterly mechanical and lifeless. Those cold eyes were now fixed on him. The hair on the back of his neck stood up.
So, the aura of the really powerful enemy was coming from this guy, huh?
The goal of the class quest could be to defeat this knight, for all he knew. If that was the case, he needed to be doubly cautious. Jin observed the movements of this Igris while slowly raising his clenched fists.
My dagger won't work on it anyway.
What was needed in defeating a knight was blunt force. He needed strength to overwhelm him.
Igris quietly observed Jin for a while, before it abruptly took off its red cape. Plop! The cape fell to the floor. What's it doing? The bastard's strange actions didn't end there. It proceeded to take off the long sword on its hips and the 2 daggers hidden behind its back and drop them all to the ground. Not only that, it showed them to him before dropping them one at a time. Clang, clang. The interior of the boss room had been quiet until then. The loud clangs of the metal hitting the stone tiles reverberated noisily throughout this vast chamber. Igris finished discarding all of its weapons, and as if to imitate Jin, clenched its fists and got into a fighting stance. Jin's eyes grew wider. Could this bastard be thinking of? Was this thing going to fight him barehanded because he was also barehanded? Jin bit his lower lip. It's looking down on me. The monster's provocation that really wasn't one only served to rapidly cool his head. The hotter his emotions boiled, the colder his head got. On the contrary to his heart beating faster and faster, Jin's eyes became sharper and calculating. Come. Perhaps reading his mind, Igris made a beeline towards him. Tap, 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 tap. The speed it produced was so fast that he found it hard to believe it was wearing a suit of armor. The speed penalty of the armors only comes into effect when the strength stat is lower than 80, right? Meaning this thing's strength was at least 80. Judging from its nimble movement, its agility would also rival some of the highest-ranked hunters out there. Igris closed the distance in the blink of an eye and leapt up into the air. Once flying, the thing stuck its knee out and aimed at Jin's face. Ah, water's good. It's fast. However, Jin had been ready as well, his own movement speed pushed to the limit. He bent his back almost 90 degrees and let Igris' attack brush past him. Jin then rapidly stood back up. Quite unlike other knights that needed some distance to stop after their tackle had failed, Igris simply landed on the ground without much fanfare. Kung! There was no time to admire that perfect landing, though. Jin rushed in, and before Igris could turn around all the way, he diagonally kicked its head. Shockingly enough, the thing still could move its arm accurately even when its posture was unstable. Slam! Jin's right leg was easily blocked by Igris' left hand. How can this be? Jin's eyes opened wider. While one of his legs was blocked, Igris' other fist flew in at its face. Swish! He raised both of his arms instinctively to guard himself, but the impact force still got transmitted to the rest of his body. Boom! His guard broke and his entire body became airborne. What? A shocked gasp escaped from his mouth, but soon it turned into a groan. Because Igris had already appeared right in front of his eyes. Even before he had the chance to do something about it, Igris' left fist powerfully slammed into Jin's left cheek. Slam! He slammed into the floor and bounced up from the impact before continuing to roll away. He only managed to force himself back up after a while. Bzzz. The inside of his ears rang noisily. Jin shook his head around a couple of times. Only then did the loud ringing die down somewhat. However, the much bigger problem than that was coming closer to him. His blurry sight captured Igris as it walked towards him. Step, step. Jin opened his eyes wider and got ready. Eventually, Igris arrived right before Jin's nose. And so, a bloody dogfight erupted between the two. Igris didn't even try to dodge Jin's punches. No, it simply took on the hits and counterattacked right away. Pow! Igris' head was forced slightly to the side. But even before Jin could correct his posture, a sharp and accurate counterpunch flew at him.
Pow!
Jin tottered about like a drunken man.
Pow!
This time, Igris took a step back.
Pow!
After his stomach was kicked in, Jin's body bent forward 90 degrees. Blood welled up in his mouth.
What is this nonsensical crap?
Currently, Jin's physical damage reduction stat had exceeded 30%. However, each of Igris's attacks hurt like crazy, as if he was being pounded on by a hammer. On the other hand, his attacks almost didn't inflict any damage to the enemy. Their exchange didn't last for long afterwards.
Pow!
Jin teetered about unsteadily before falling to his knees. Plop. He tried to stand back up, but his legs didn't want to listen. Plop. Igris stood before Jin, but stopped attacking him. It wordlessly stared down at him for a while. Then, while ignoring Jin's question-filled gaze directed at it, Igris extended its hand out towards the sword discarded to the ground some distance away. Then, the sword was automatically reeled in. Igris grasped the sword in both of its hands and walked to the side of Jin. Soon, the tip of the blade was pointing to the sky.
You want to execute me, is that it?
This bastard certainly lived up to its title as the captain of the knights. When it looked like Jin wasn't going to resist his final moments, Igris went ahead with the execution. Of course, Jin wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. The sword fell down in a straight line. However, Jin reached up with his left hand and blocked the descending blade.
Clang!
The noise of metal hitting metal. The gauntlet he found just before entering here protected his hand. Flinch. He sensed Igris being taken aback just now. Jin didn't miss this chance and threw a punch with his right hand. As expected, Igris didn't try to dodge.
You're probably thinking of countering me again, right?
It had probably calculated that getting hit once while countering that was far more productive. Too bad it failed to take something important into its calculation.
Poison Fang of Kasaka! Shoo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
The Poison Fang of Kasaka was summoned instantly into his hand, and Jin stabbed the dagger in the creature's eye. Stab! A scream that couldn't have come from a human being exploded out. At the same time, a fierce light poured out from the eye with the dagger sticking out. Jin hurriedly stood back up. Now what? Just damaging one eye wouldn't be able to determine the winner of this battle. He needed an attack even more powerful than that if he wanted to win. It was then a thought entered his mind. The horrifying attack that almost pushed him to the brink of death the other day. He wanted to let Igris taste that attack too. Before he could finish thinking that, his body moved first. Jin bent down and bear-hugged Igris's midriff. And then, he began running. Igris thrashed about in pain and managed to land several solid blows on Jin's back. However, he gritted his teeth and didn't let Igris go. No, he increased his speed instead. Dash!
Your movement speed has increased by 40%.
Jin's legs were now moving so much faster. He felt the electrifying speed sending chills down his entire body.
Yes, this is it. And now?
And now, he'd slam this bastard. While gripping the midriff of Igris even harder, he dashed towards the nearest wall with every ounce of energy he had. Of course, if they collided against the wall at this speed, the impact his own body received would be substantial as well. However, Jin had a hidden trump card in the form of a certain passive skill. The distance closed in the blink of an eye. The wall was right behind them. Kaboom! Along with the huge explosion, Igris crashed into the wall. At the same time, a message from the system popped up.
Your HP has dropped below 30%, and skill tenacity has been activated. All damage received will be reduced by 50%.
The impact force was great enough for the entire boss room to tremble momentarily. Jin took a step back. Igris was buried halfway into the wall, yet it was still alive. The flame of life burning under the helm was still flickering noticeably. I need to finish this. Jin yanked the poison fang of Kasaka, still buried in its eye, loose. That caused Igris's body to quiver once. Jin held the dagger in a reverse grip and stabbed hard at the bastard's neck. Vital points targeting! Clang! The attack failed to work. One more time. Vital points targeting! Clang! Sparks flew off from the tip of the dagger. A small nick formed on the metal covering the monster's neck. One more time. Vital points targeting! Clang! One more. Clang! One more. Clang! And finally, vital points targeting! Crack! The poison fang of Kasaka broke past the protective metal and dug deep into its neck.
You defeated the captain of the knights, Igris the Crimson. Level up. Level up.
Jin raised both of his hands up high into the sky. He took several steps back before losing all strength in his legs and faltered to the floor. Jin spat out the heavy breaths he had been holding in until now. He won, somehow. It was an incredibly close fight. However, wasn't this the end of the quest? Jin collected his breaths for a long time before painfully raising his body up. He expected the class quest to end once he killed this guy, but not one message popped up in his view. He looked around, but he failed to spot anything different in the boss room. No, there was one thing that was different from before. Several strands of light began flickering on Igris's body, meaning his loot was now ready. For the time being, let's grab these. After all, he couldn't tell what else might happen here. Grabbing things that he could grab when there was a chance was the smartest move one could make, wasn't it? Jin reached out towards those lights.
Item. Red Knight's helm has been found. Take it. Runestone. Ruler's Reach has been found. Take it. Item. Leather pouch has been found. Take it. Item. Immediate return stone has been found. Take it.
Why were there so many? Jin felt rather puzzled, but still he couldn't hide his elation either. Acquire them all. The first thing to enter his inventory was a leather pouch.
Item. Leather pouch has been opened. 1,500,000 gold is inside. 1,500,000 gold has been acquired.
Jin's eyes went extra round. The level of reward is on another scale altogether. It definitely was worth it, defeating it after going through so much crap. He wasn't expecting all that much to begin with, yet the leather pouch spat out an unbelievable amount of 1,500,000 gold. With this amount, he'd be able to buy something useful from the store now. However, Jin's attention was directed elsewhere at the moment. If the leather pouch he didn't even hold high hopes for managed to produce such wealth, then just how high was the value of the helm or the runestone? Jin tried very hard to calm his heart and brought up the information on the helm.
Tring! Item. Red Knight's helm. Rarity S. Type Armor. Reduction in physical damage plus 15%. Stamina plus 20. Strength plus 20.
It's an S! Jin cried out in elation. That's the end of chapter 48, onwards to chapter 49. And Kitty, you say welcome back? Yeah, welcome back. Had to step away? It's all good. I told you, it's all fine. If you got to step away, by all means do so. Chapter 49. For the first time ever, an item with a rarity ranking of S showed up. Just the effect of 15% reduction in physical damage alone would have made it a top-tier item, yet it even possessed two more remarkable additional attributes of raising the stamina and strength stats by 20 points each. Just seeing those options alone made his heart palpitate so much faster. The rarity A items can't even compare to it. He had acquired 2 A-ranked items up until now. The first was the poison sac of Kasaka, the one he got after he defeated the snake blue Kasaka. The second one being the Gatekeeper's necklace after he defeated the Cerberus. Those 2 items were already quite excellent. The poison sac had the terrible penalty of stealing 35 points from his strength stat, but its effect also decreased the physical damage taken by 20%. What about the Gatekeeper's necklace then? It was one of the best items out there that increased both agility and perception stats by 20 each. 2 stats he now knew the importance of. But the Red Knight's helm possessed the kind of buffing effect that combined both of those items, and without any penalty to boot. No need to mention it. It's the best. He was fully aware of the fact that he was standing in the middle of the dungeon's boss room, yet the smile on his face didn't want to go away. And if he were to add in one more unnecessary point here, he even liked the helm's design. It's a bit of a pity to hide this thing, though. The crimson helm that immediately reminded all onlookers of the flowing blood and the mane connected to the helm itself made him feel like he was holding an artistic masterpiece. It was only for a brief moment, but he even felt compelled to put on the full set of this armor if it existed somewhere. However, what a waste. Igris's other armor pieces weren't considered to be loot, as there were no lights coming off from them. Only the helm could be taken away. Jin forced back a rueful smile and cautiously put on the helm. Poof! Just as always, the helm disappeared from the view immediately. Although he couldn't show off his new look, his stats had gained a huge boost thanks to his new headwear. Stats: Strength 128 plus 20. Stamina 87 plus 20. Agility 107. Intelligence 66. Perception 89. Reduction in physical damage 46% plus 15%. The numbers appearing in brackets were the increases in his stats from the helm itself. Not only the strength and stamina stats, but the hard-to-increase damage reduction stat all enjoyed massive boosts. He was completely and utterly satisfied now. Having confirmed the increase with his own 2 eyes, his heart began beating even faster. No. Jin quickly shook his head. The quest isn't over yet, so let's calm down. Besides, he still had other items to sort out too. With the trace of excitement still lingering in his mind, Jin shifted his gaze to the other 2 items. Runestone, Ruler's Reach. Item, Immediate Return Stone. 2 pieces of stones. Out of the 2 walnut-sized stones, the first one to grab his curious attention was the Immediate Return Stone. I know what a runestone is, but this? Just what could this Immediate Return Stone do? His curiosity got resolved pretty quickly, however. The information on the Immediate Return Stone floated up right away.
Ding! Item: Immediate Return Stone. Rarity: Unknown. Type: Consumable. An item exclusive to this challenge class change quest. Challenge change quest. An item exclusive to this class change quest. When destroyed, you'll be transported outside the dungeon immediately. However, once the class change quest has been concluded, it will automatically be destroyed. Can't be stored in the inventory.
The way to use it was similarly the can't be stored in the inventory. Oh wait,
Can't be stored in the inventory.
the way to use it was similar to a rune stone. However, to think that its effect wasn't about absorbing a new skill, but to escape from this dungeon. Hang on a sec. The class change quest isn't over yet? If that were the case, then this particular item should have been destroyed already. Since it hadn't, that could only mean... For some reason, he felt a creeping chill slowly caress his spine. What an odd sensation that was. He had received one of the best items out there that could help him make his escape from this dungeon, yet why was he getting this incredibly bad premonition right now? If this stone could be used in regular dungeons, and not only inside the system-generated ones, then just about everyone alive would try to buy this thing. Seriously, this stone would be the same as having a surefire way to save their lives, so no one should be foolish enough to pinch pennies when trying to get their hands on one. It was the same with Jin, too. Just this item alone should decrease the burden of this quest by a great deal. If I so choose. He'd be able to escape at any time. However, the ominous feeling taking root in the corner of his mind didn't want to go away no matter what. And sure enough, the warning beep from the system went off in his head as if it was waiting for this moment.
Ding! Player has acquired the immediate return stone. The class change quest will now commence.
Oh crap, so this was the item to start the quest for real. He nearly fainted on the spot. He felt like he had stepped on something he shouldn't have in the first place. If I knew this might happen, I'd have taken a short break first. What would regret do for him now? No matter how much one relied on one's experience and knowledge to predict the future, one would never be able to correctly guess the tricks of fate. A strand of cold sweat dripped down from Jin's forehead. Jin summoned the status window inwardly and confirmed the remaining HP and his fatigue level. HP, 4161 out of 10,270. MP, 390 out of 850. Tiredness, 61. The tiredness stat is a bit on the high side, but I could still do this. The helm's added effects enhanced his stamina stat by a lot, which meant that his overall endurance had increased greatly as well, and his remaining HP had risen up as an added bonus too. What a relief that was. As if to encourage himself, Jin continued to tell himself that. I can still do this. It's not impossible. Of course, his life should not be in any immediate danger, because he held the immediate return stone after all. However, no matter how hard he thought about it, this immediate return stone sounded awfully like an item that signified him giving up on the quest. If that was the case, then it shouldn't have been the quest starting item to begin with. If I give up on this quest, wouldn't it be the same as him giving up on this chance to get his class? The cold sweat on his forehead rolled past his temple and down to his chin before dripping down. Just as he swallowed a bit of dry spit, that is 6. I'm counting it. Saliva, spit, same thing. That's 6 now. Just as he swallowed a bit of dry spit and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down, the system's new message popped up in his view.
In 10 seconds, dimensional doorways will be randomly generated.
Dimensional doorways? Even before his question could be cleared up, huge numbers appeared up in the middle of the air. 000010. He could easily tell what that was. It most likely was signifying the countdown. Meanwhile, the messages continued on.
Player has a choice. You can escape from the dungeon by using the immediate return stone, or
8, 7, 6. The timer continued to tick down to 0.
Or Endure as long as you can and earn as many advancement points as possible in order to access the higher ranked classes.
Endure? Endure what exactly? He ended up shouting out loudly as his frustration mounted. However, Jin was already holding the Poison Fang of Kasaka summoned from his inventory. He stored the rune stone inside the inventory, while the immediate return stone was placed inside the back of his pocket since it couldn't be stored there. Think you'll try to look in the previous read-through so you can keep the total count? It's well over 20, I want to say. I think it's either close to 20 or just well over 20. But either one of those two. He stored the rune stone inside the inventory, while the immediate return stone was placed inside the back of his pocket since it couldn't be stored there. Even though his heart beat fast and hard enough to nearly explode, he didn't forget to get ready for the battle that was about to come. That was how Jin operated.
The class change quest will soon commence.
4, 3, 2. Jin anxiously glared at the time and quickly scanned his surroundings. His head and eyes darted around quickly over here and over there. Something ominous was clearly getting ready to begin. The space around him was separating and twisting visibly to his eyes. 1.
I wish you the best of luck.
What? For the first time ever, the system expressed emotion. Too bad. He had no time to stew inside his shock. The moment the timer hit 0, several gates began forming all around him. Not just 1 or 2 either. He first spotted 6 around him. The number continued to climb up even higher, however. And at the same time, the timer became play. You know what? I need water. Because words wants to escape me. And at the same time, the timer began ticking upwards. From 1 to 2. The countdown began again. The time would become his so-called advancement points. He hadn't understood everything the system said, but still he did figure out some parts of it. The longer I endure, the stronger I get? No, more specifically, he'd instead get a powerful class. There was no way he'd throw away a golden opportunity like this. He also had some wiggle room left with his HP and MP. Let's endure as long as I can. 3. When the timer hit exactly 3 seconds, weaponless knights poured out from the nearest gate. Thud, 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 thud. When the knights decked out in full armor formed silver-colored waves, the ground couldn't help but tremor from the weight. The momentum these things displayed would have been enough to overwhelm most people, but there was a smile floating up onto Jin's lips instead. If it's these guys, I can definitely fight them. In a way, he was oh so glad to see them as his opponents. If the monsters coming out from the gates happened to be as strong as Igris, then he wouldn't even be able to last a couple of seconds. Stealth. Jin used some part of the remaining MP and activated the skill Stealth. For the time being, I should observe what's happening here first. Jin's form blurred and slowly disappeared. As expected, the knights rushing towards him all came to an abrupt halt. However,
The mage has used skills Eyes of Detection.
I wager we'll have 300 by the time it's over. Sounds about right.
The mage has used skills Eyes of Detection.
The crisp tring of the warning beeps resounded in his head. Jin's head snapped in the direction of the beep. What was that? He spotted a mage that had just emerged from the gate chanting a spell. That's also when Jin discovered an eye-like symbol floating above the head of the mage. The moment that eye flashed. In that moment, Jin's stealth was cancelled. Crap. From the get-go, his calculation proved to be way off the mark. Snap! Snap!
The knights that stood around like telephone poles snapped their heads all at once towards Jin's direction. Oh, that sounds horrifying. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie. Well, you know, the story can clearly see my intent here. And soon enough, the silver waves pounced on him. Jin's eyes opened wider, and he gritted his teeth. Boom! His punch blew away the head of the incoming knight. That guy died where it stood.
You defeated the knight.
Crazed lights shone in Jin's eyes. Intimidation.
Skill Intimidation has been activated. Effect Fear has been activated. The target's stats will decrease by all stats will decrease by 50% for 1 minute.
The movements of the monsters became much duller through the effects of fear, but his mana fell down to 90 points. The intimidation required 100 MP in order to activate. He wouldn't be able to use it the second time. However, I just bought myself a minute. Intending to use this precious minute to the best of his abilities as the monsters were noticeably weakened, Jin began wailing on them with everything he had. Boom! Crack! Kaboom! Slam! With a terrifying momentum, he proceeded to utterly dismantle the knights. Boom! Slam! Crack! Too bad. The speed of him defeating knights was far inferior to the rate of the replacement knights popping out from the gates. Rumble! Even in the midst of the maddened battle, Jin sneaked a glance at the timer. 3 minutes and 19 seconds. It only been 3 minutes and 19 seconds. If that was converted into points, how much would he get? Wouldn't it be fine for him to leave this place now? However, he didn't have any leeway to dwell on that matter. Even while he was thinking to himself, knights were continuously pouring out from the gates like unstoppable waves. He managed to destroy countless knights, yet he simply couldn't deal with so many of them. In the end, Jin was buried in the sea of knights.
Passive skill Tenacity has been activated. Passive skill Tenacity has been activated.
His HP was in a free fall now, and eventually it hit rock bottom. HP 1036 out of 10,270. The timer is 5 minutes and 8 seconds. He had endured enough, hadn't he? Let's get out of here. Now completely entrapped among the knights, Jin flailed about helplessly in this silver prison and dug through his back pocket. However, drop. The immediate return stone slipped out from his grasp and fell to the floor, and the roundish stone hit the soul of one of the knights and rolled away far from him. No! Jin hurriedly reached out towards the stone, but the knights blocked him. Soon, knights piled up on top of him, too. It became almost impossible to breathe in an instant.
Passive skill Tenacity has been activated. Passive skill Tenacity has been activated.
His consciousness began to blur. Pow! Pow! He continuously got struck by the knights while trapped below them, and as his mind began to grow dimmer, he thought he heard a snarky cackle coming from somewhere. Shut up. Shut the heck up! Kaboom! The knights surrounding and pressing down on Jin were suddenly all blown away. Even though he somehow managed to crawl out from death, his eyes were burning with life. As a matter of fact, his eyes were burning with a stubborn will and sheer malice. I won't let it end like this! He earned this opportunity after going through so much. So how could he let it end like this? Never. Because he was stuck at the very bottom for so long, he yearned to be on top more than anything else. He knew the sorrow of the weak better than anyone. He tried everything to survive, and when he did survive, others kept pointing fingers at him. Gotta go? All right, Kitty, thank you for stopping by. It was an immense honor having you here. So how could he simply watch and do nothing when a ladder that could take him to the very top was put in front of his eyes? What a rubbish notion that was. I remember now. That voice ringing around his head just now. That voice belonged to those bastards. The voice that always yapped on and on from behind his back. Fine. Laugh all you want. I'll struggle on until the bitter end. It's fine if my HP drops to 10. No, 1. I'll struggle and struggle on like crazy, right until the end. I'll fight until I won't be able to move anymore. Jin threw his body forward. Crack! He thrust forward another punch. A knight's breastplate caved in and the monster flew away. Other knights collided with it and they all fell on their butts. But then more knights rushed in again. Jin's movements became a step more violent in response. Crack, boom, slam! Without an exception, knights colliding with Jin's body parts, be that his fist, elbow, knee, feet, were all destroyed like a bunch of paper dolls.
Tiredness has exceeded 70 points. Your movement is being restricted.
Just as the warning message said, his movements became duller. However, the malice and anger in Jin's eyes didn't weaken in the slightest. One by one, the knights he couldn't defeat in one hit slammed into him. Jin resorted to hitting them 3-4 times and made sure to destroy them. 8, 7, 6, 5. In the meantime, a strange countdown was silently ticking down. He was too focused on the battle, so he failed to notice it before the timer had reached the single digit. What's this? Is the quest coming to an end? A small ray of hope blossomed in his head for a brief moment, but it turned out to be nothing but a useless dream. 6 minutes and 27 seconds. The quest timer was still ticking up as it's supposed to. No, something separate from this timer was counting down 1 second at a time. 4, 3, 2. Is it to show me the time of my death? Indeed, the system did tell him this way back then. Way back then. It told him that if he didn't accept becoming a player, he died 0.2 seconds later. Fine. Jin glared fiercely. I'll gladly use up every moment, right down to the final second! Slam! Crack! 2 more knights were destroyed in the meantime. Unlike Jin's unyielding stubbornness, though, his entire body was now riddled with all sorts of wounds. It became progressively much harder to lift his arms. His weakened fists. I need some more water. Remain hydrated and mind clear. His weakened fist wasn't enough to stop the knight's tackles and charges anymore. From the front, 1. From the back, another 1. Slam! Jin was sandwiched powerfully by the 2 knights slamming into him from the front and back, and he spat out a pained groan. Other knights pounced on him as if they didn't want to miss this chance. In the blink of an eye, Jin was buried under the masses of knights and couldn't even lift a finger. Rumble. Even during that, more knights continued to pile on top of Jin. The silver waves had transformed into a silver mountain instead. Jin's breathing became incredibly harsh. At this rate, he'd be asphyxiated to death first. Jin's hand somehow broke out from the gaps of the knights and helplessly pointed towards the sky. HP 93 out of 10,270. He was in a truly desperate situation. Even then, Jin did not give up, though. No, not yet. I can still go on. Just as Jin managed to clench the hand pointed at the sky, the mysterious countdown ticking down finally announced its conclusion. 1, 0.
You failed to complete the daily quest. You'll be transferred to the penalty zone.
And that is the end of chapter 49. Onwards to the last chapter for today. Chapter 50. Jin doubted his own hearing just then. Penalty zone? Ah, he then remembered it. He didn't do the daily quest for today. He was planning on confirming the results of his constant leveling up, and to help him decide whether he was ready to tackle the demon's castle or not. Who could have guessed that things might unfold in this manner? Just like back in the hospital, everything began to violently shake. Plop, plop. The knights piling on top of Jin turned into figures of sand one by one. The world surrounding him was changing. Jin soundlessly laughed to himself. For some reason, the words the system spoke to him before the beginning of the quest circled around inside his head.
I wish you the best of luck.
Was it trying to imply that the quest itself was unimaginably hard, to the point that he needed luck to complete it? Or was it implying that it'd cheer him on, as he resorted to borrowing the power of luck and earn a ton of advancement points that way? Luck, coincidence, whatever it was called, he didn't care. No matter what it was, his chance had come. The important thing was how he'd go about utilizing it. Rumble! The tremor was getting worse. Rather than wasting time trying to stabilize himself, Jin entrusted his body to the tremor and closed his eyes. Let's not get agitated here. When he did that, he felt airborne and weightless, and all sound vanished from his hearing. When he reopened his eyes, he found himself in the middle of the endless sea of sand. Jin plopped down, face first. His fingers dug into the desert sand as the held-up breaths exploded out of his mouth. Fresh air entered and flowed into every corner of his body via his lungs. Finally. I feel alive. Finally. I feel alive. The sense of relief wrapped Jin up tightly as he rolled onto his back. He could see the black sky above with nothing in it. The endless expanse of the pitch-black ceiling was the only thing his eyes could capture. This place looked exactly the same as a penalty zone from his memories. Wait, I shouldn't be wasting time like this. He had forgotten that this place was not a safe zone either, since he just made a miraculous escape from a comparably far worse area. But Jin couldn't be bothered into standing up anytime soon, so while lying on his back, he summoned the status window. HP 104 out of 10,027. 10,227. MP 202 out of 850. Tiredness 91. He was wondering why it was so difficult to move his body, but as it turned out, the darn tiredness stat was over 90. This is probably my first time that stat has gone past 90, right? He really didn't want to even lift a finger here. His health was one thing, but he figured that lowering his fatigue took priority. Store. Ding! 2 words, buy and sell, popped up in the air. Although the layout of this store imparted not one hint of sincerity, no matter how kind he looked at it, he found it such a welcoming sight right now. He picked out the most expensive healing potion on sale. As soon as he confirmed the purchase, a glass bottle containing red liquid appeared on his wide-open palm. Jin laboriously popped the cork open and poured the potion down his mouth. The red liquid traveled down his throat and entered deep into his body.
Your fatigue is recovering. Your fatigue is recovering. Your fatigue is recovering.
Maybe because it was the most expensive potion, just one bottle was enough to lower the tiredness value at a visible rate. However, for some reason, his HP value didn't change at all. HP 106 out of 10,220. MP 204 out of 850. Tiredness 0. Even after he finished the whole bottle, his HP didn't recover. It was such a noticeable contrast to his tiredness stat hitting 0. Why is it doing this? Only after he completely drained the bottle did he finally get to understand the reason for this anomaly.
Ding! When your remaining HP is less than 10%, it is impossible to heal yourself with healing potions. When your remaining HP is less than 10%, it is impossible to heal yourself with healing potions.
What a simple reason that. His remaining HP was too low. Of course. Even healing magic had its limitations. It was not a foreign concept to him. Just as a healer's ranking determined the scope of their healing capabilities, potions too couldn't heal past a certain limit. And that limit is 10%, huh? He learned something important today. He might have landed in really hot water during a critical moment by believing potions could solve everything. This was why experiencing it firsthand was important. Well, there was an old saying, wasn't there? Things that couldn't kill... Well, there wasn't... Oh, sorry, this wasn't Jin reading. I got so too into it. This was why experiencing firsthand was important. Well, there was an old saying, wasn't there? Things that couldn't kill him would make him stronger. That perfectly illustrated the usefulness of personal experience. And thankfully, Jin possessed experience regarding the penalty zone. I'm sure they should pop up right about now. And just as he expected, he sensed the presence of life forms beneath the surface. Jin tightly shrunk his body for a second before springing up to his feet. His entire body felt as light as a feather. His strength had returned in full, thanks to the potion. Standing straight on his feet, Jin turned around and took a look. Just as he expected, the spot he was lying on a second ago began caving in and a crater formed there. Back then, I thought I'd die if I slipped and fell in there. But now he had so much leeway that he was actually spectating on the whole process with some leisure. At the very bottom of the sandy crater, the ground began to boil and tremble about before the sand exploded up like a pillar and the huge centipede revealed itself. Trying to do a good centipede sound. You know what? That's a good sound. Everything matched up to his memories so far. And I found this thing so terrifying to look at back then, too. But now, he couldn't help feeling like he was looking at some video footage being played in slow motion. Jin raised his eyes a bit higher, and he got to clearly confirm those red letters floating above the centipede's head. Poison-fanged giant desert centipede. Its name was in red letters, the same color as the Cerberus from the Demon's Castle. It was then the quest message appeared before his eyes.
Ding! Penalty quests. Survival. Goal. Please survive until the end of the time limit. Time limit, 4 hours. Remaining time, 4 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds.
Confirming the details of the message, Jin clenched his fist tightly. I can buy myself time with this. Since he hadn't used the immediate return stone to escape from the dungeon, he still had a shot there. I'm pretty sure that as soon as the penalty quest is over, I will be sent back to that place. Don't know why you always start chuckling when you hear my insect sounds, because I'm trying to find the good feel for it. So I went from going, and then I went for the. So, something that sounds otherworldly, What if time spent inside the penalty zone was acknowledged as the time he endured during the quest? his advancement points tally would be enormous. He couldn't even imagine just what kind of an impact that would have. However, when he thought back to how the system affected him every day, he was sure of this becoming something absolutely huge. 4 hours. He couldn't even endure 10 minutes and tried to use the immediate return stone. And yet, simply by transferring into the penalty zone, he now got himself 4 hours for free. There was one issue he still had to resolve first. However, there was one issue he still had to solve first. Still had to resolve first. However, and that would be whether he could get out of this place unscathed with only 100 or so HP remaining. And it was impossible to heal himself using potions. He had to do his best to cautiously kill these centipedes until he leveled up. It was kind of like a new mission for him. Let's do this. Jin summoned the poison fang of Kasaka, and then...
Remaining time, 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds.
Then, as soon as the penalty quest began, he dashed forward, even before the centipede had a chance to move. Jin closed the distance in the blink of an eye and lightly leapt up right in front of the centipede. Put! It literally said, that sound I made, that put, it is literally written out P-A-H-T. Put! He landed on one of the legs near the midpoint of the centipede and, as he made his way up, Jin proceeded to inflict several injuries on the body of the monster. Stab, stab, stab! On all the spots the reverse grip poison fang of Kasaka brushed past, flesh split open, and bodily fluid poured out. The centipede roared out and thrashed about as if each wound inflicted was too painful to bear. Dash! Jin's sprinting legs became even faster. Step, 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 step. Jin deftly treaded on the centipede's body and arrived at the top of its head only a second later. He gripped the dagger with both of his hands and raised it high. And then... Vital points targeting. He used his skill and stabbed down on the centipede's head with every ounce of his power. The downward pointing blade dug deep into the flesh of the centipede's head. Crack! Love the voices, just don't forget to hydrate since it must be hard on you. Not even a little. I've been doing voices for 10 years now. This is literally nothing. I remember the first time I tried doing deep voices, like doing Bakugo's voice for My Hero Academia, and I was sick for weeks because my voice was never used to it. Now, I can do all these voices, and I don't even get like a single hint of a tickle anymore. I've built up a resistance for it, so doing these voices, literally nothing. But I am keeping myself hydrated all the same. He used this skill, vital points targeting. He used his skill and stabbed down on the centipede's head with every ounce of his power. The downward pointing blade dug deep into the flesh of the centipede's head. Crack!
Skill Vital Points Targeting has leveled up.
Oh, I love it when skills level up. Nice! What a wonderful piece of news to show up in such a long time. The damage from the leveled up Vital Points Targeting must have been pretty substantial because the centipede shook its head around quite violently and thrashed about in pain. Jin didn't stop there. He stepped away from its head and moved to its back because he saw a completely unguarded body part to attack. Stab! Jin stabbed the dagger deep in the monster's back flesh, and by using gravity, he fell to the ground while holding on to his weapon. The power from the strength stat exceeding 120 points, as well as the helping hand of gravity added on top as he fell from the height of a 5-story building, caused the centipede's back to split open quite splendidly. Tap. Jin landed on the ground without any trouble. The centipede spewed out its bodily fluids everywhere. Its giant body thrashed and quivered before it slowly crashed on the ground. Boom! The huge body of the centipede landed and kicked up the dust cloud.
You defeated the Poison Fang giant desert centipede.
Jin dusted himself off while checking out the remaining time.
Remaining time. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 42 seconds.
I spent 17 seconds. He didn't even need 20 seconds to kill a single centipede. It was a complete contrast to when he was fighting the Cerberus, ostensibly on the same level as the centipede. Oh, they're using big words now. He had become unbelievably strong now. Well, yeah, I've leveled up so many times since then, and just how many items did I get my hands on in the meantime? It was a rather obvious conclusion. He now felt confident of hunting other centipedes down without getting hurt if these monsters posed such a little threat. Now then, my problem would be the number of monsters in this place that I can hunt to reach my next level. That would be the only way to raise his odds of his victory when he got thrown back into the class quest. If he went back without having recovered his HP, only a dog's death would be waiting for him there. It was at this point when more sand pillars began erupting from the ground. It seemed that quite a lot of centipedes rushed over here after picking up on the scent of the blood from its dead kin. Almost immediately, Jin's expression brightened. Just how many are there? Seeing all those centipedes poking their heads out from the sandy surface, Jin could no longer suppress the wide smile from blooming on his face. And mind you, Jin's not the one laughing, I am, because I'm loving this.
Level up, level up, level up, level up.
As the result of wrestling around with these centipedes for the past 4 hours, his level rose up 4 times, and now it sat at 51. Before he knew it, the penalty quest was coming to an end.
Penalty quest, survival. Goal, please survive until the end of the time limit. Time limit, 4 hours. Remaining time, 3 minutes and 19 seconds.
Soon he'd have to go back. Jin took a sweeping look around him. The corpses of centipedes filled up his view everywhere he looked. Thanks to them, he got to recover his HP back to full. It's a bit of a waste that these things don't give any loot or gold. Well, it'd be strange that loot would come out when he was supposed to get punished in this place. He stopped worrying about that and got ready instead. Store.
Current gold, 3,115,629.
Humanoid monsters drop the gold-containing leather pouch really often, and also Igris also gave him 1.5 million gold in one go. So, he now had enough funds to spend. Jin spent all that gold to build one single weapon. As a matter of fact, there was this one dagger that caught his eye.
Item, Night Killer. Rarity, B. Type, dagger. Attack, plus 75. A sharp and sturdy dagger designed to cut through the armor worn by the knights. The edges of the blade are sharpened like the teeth of a saw blade, thus it won't slide off the armor's surface easily. Effect, killing knights, plus 25%, additional damage when attacking heavily armored opponents.
It was a specially crafted weapon to deal with armor-wearing enemies, and it cost 2.8 million gold. He had to spend almost every gold he had in reserve to buy this weapon, but he didn't have any leeway to shed a tear over it. It's not like I can take the gold with me to the grave anyway. He didn't hesitate and bought the dagger.
You have purchased Night Killer. You have purchased bandages.
Along with the Night Killer, Jin also bought a roll of bandages. He held the dagger with a rather scary-looking saw blade-like cutting edge in his right hand and wrapped them both tightly with the bandage. When he swung the Night Killer around a couple of times, it felt like the dagger had become a part of his limb now. At a bare minimum, I shouldn't drop it accidentally. He thought about tying the poison fang of Kasuga to his left hand too, but he decided not to. It'd be too cumbersome when he couldn't use both of his hands. He figured that at least one of his hands still retaining its mobility would make his life more flexible. While he was putting away the leftover bandage in inventory, he spotted the runestone from Igris. Ah, there was this thing too.
Runestone, Ruler's Reach. You can absorb the skill by breaking this runestone.
Right now, he needed to grasp at everything, even if that was a piece of straw. Whether that was an item or a skill, he needed to obtain whatever that could become his combat strength. Jin didn't hesitate and broke the runestone.
You've acquired skill, Ruler's Reach. Skill, Ruler's Reach level 1. Active skill. Required mana to activate, none. Even without touching, you can physically influence an object.
Ah. As soon as he read that description, he recalled a certain scene. It was when Igris extended its hand towards its longsword that was discarded on the floor far away. So, this is the skill that made the sword move back then. A skill that can move objects around from a distance with nothing but his will? On top of that, he didn't even have to spend any mana either. If I'm able to move any object I see just like the description says, then this will be one heck of a skill to possess. Jin immediately tried to experiment with the skill on the corpse of the centipede next to him.
Your proficiency is too low and the target can't be moved.
If he wanted to move something heavy, then it was likely that his proficiency with the skill had to be much higher. How about this then? Jin dropped the poison fang of Kasuga to the floor, and he extended his hand towards the dagger. Then, the dagger quickly rose up. Grab! Oh. Jin snatched the poison fang's hilt and stared at it with totally mystified eyes. Nice. This will come in handy. And with that, he was as prepared as he could get. When he raised his head to confirm, the remaining time was almost up. When the timer changed from 4 to 3 seconds left. When the timer changed from 4 to 3, a new message from the system popped up in his view.
Ta-ding! Penalty quest will conclude shortly.
And another message following after that one.
Ta-ding! As you have tried to hunt inside the penalty zone, the difficulty of the next penalty quest will be adjusted to a higher level.
The difficulty would be adjusted higher, meaning it made the hunting so much harder that the penalty quest would actually serve its purpose as proper punishment again. But then again, would there be the next time? Jin anxiously swallowed his saliva. That is now 7 times. From here onwards, it's back to the Sorry about that. Jin anxiously swallowed his saliva. From here onwards, it's back
to the class change.
Why do I keep wanting to say challenge?
From here onwards, it's back to the class change quest.
Inside that boss room, hundreds of monsters were waiting for his return. Or the number could be even higher now. If he was being kind here, he was returning to that place, but truthfully, it was more like him being thrown back in there. HP, MP, tiredness, equipment, and even a new skill, and his renewed resolve. His current condition was so much better than when he first set foot in that place, but when he thought about going back there, he couldn't help but get tense and nervous. His heart beat so hard that it actually hurt. Jin closed his eyes. He tried to maintain his calm. Soon the familiar mechanical beep went off in his head.
Ta-ding! Penalty quest has concluded.
This is my last chance. When Jin opened his eyes again, his vision was filled with the silver-colored knights all snapping their heads in his direction at once. However, they weren't important right now. Right away, Jin narrowed his eyes and searched for something. I gotta find the mages first. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 50. And that brings this entire session to a close. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been chapters 41 to 50 of the solo leveling novel. And all I can say to you is that it has been an immense honor and privilege entertaining all of you during this reading. I will see you pretty much in August, the Monday after next, because I take a break every other Monday after I'm done reading. I'll see you the Monday after next in August as we continue to read more of this amazing story, because it is awesome. Mihai, thank you for becoming a member. I promise you won't regret it. It is still surprising to me that people do that. So I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, welcome to the members team. And I look forward to seeing you at the members summit that we have in August as well. Thank you for your work. Have a wonderful day. You too as well, Mihai. That's it. I'm done, ladies and gentlemen. Once this whole stream is all set up and processed, I'll make sure that I cut out my lunch break and also put timestamps so everyone can know exactly where a chapter starts and ends. So it'll be incredibly easy for all of you to find any place you may, leave off and try to come back to. But with that being said, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. Have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.